Okay, with that, I'd like to call the Budget and Public Employees meeting to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Odenberg.
Present.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Sanier.
Present.
Alderman Aldred.
Present.
Chair Spencer.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd. We have 5 present. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate everyone's patience here. We're double dipping in transportation and budget and public employees at the same time here this morning. We have just one item on our agenda again today, and that is Board Bill number 1. Today we have Human Services, the Communications Division, and Parks and Recreation. We're starting out with Director Russell from the Human Services Department. And if you may, you can go ahead and join us here at the dais. And a friendly reminder to introduce your guests and speak into the microphone for the folks at home.
Thank you, Alderwoman Spencer. Valerie Russell with the City of St. Louis Department of Human Services, and with me is Parimal Mehta. Parimal is our fiscal manager within the department.
And if you don't mind, could you give the committee just a quick overview of all of the activities and responsibilities under your purview?
The Department of Human Services is charged under the charter to provide a quality of life for citizens through the provision of social service programs for the aged, homeless, veterans, individuals who are disabled, youth and families, and we have special contracts that we initiate for various projects. We do not provide a great deal of direct services with the exception of the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging. Most of our funds are utilized to subcontract with other entities. There are numerous divisions. I listed them briefly: the Homeless Services Division, Youth and Family Services, Veterans Affairs, Offices on the Disabled, and Aging Services, in addition to the Administrative Office.
Okay, and we'll go through your report here, and then for those who want to follow along with the budget, we're looking at 213 in our annual operating plan, and I believe page 400 in our line item. Okay.
All right. The FY24 budget, inclusive of grant funds and city general revenue, local use tax, economic development sales tax, is going to be roughly $49,751,853. Those dollars are used, as I indicated, to provide direct services through subcontracts with the various entities, and that number includes those dollars that are included for the ARPA funds that have been appropriated to the Department of Human Services.
Can you repeat that so we've got $49 million, and can you repeat the sources from which they come? So we've got $1.8 million coming from the general fund. Is that right? And then can you kind of walk through what makes up that $49 million?
Sure. Local use tax includes funds that are provided primarily through use tax dollars that go to the Homeless Services Division, and it pays for some staff who are engaged as client service coordinators, some of the administrative staff. Grant and other funds include the funds that we receive from HUD, the ARPA funds that have been appropriated to our department for various projects. Grant funds include those dollars that come to our St. Louis Area on Aging from Office on the Aging, federal, the state of Missouri, and other special grants. The economic development sales tax funds come to the department through a special tax through an economic development board that goes through SLDC. Those funds are utilized for special youth programs, specifically a project called Youth Empowerment, we select service providers through an RFP process. As I indicated earlier, the department provides very few direct services, so the majority of the funds are utilized for subcontracts that we have to, by law, issue a request for proposals. Entities have an opportunity to submit bids or proposals for those. The selection is done through the Professional Services Agreement Committee. PSA is the shorter name for that. And those representatives are selected and approved by the mayor's office, the comptroller's office, and the Board of Aldermen. They assist our department in various ways and have to become completely familiar with the types of projects and the regulations that govern our programs. Under Prop P and sales tax and use tax, those dollars, that $2 million, is utilized for a variety of activities. The city has a shelter, the men's shelter called Biddle House. It's a 24-hour location. There are funds within Prop P that also go to fund a mediation project for the city for residents and businesses who may have disputes that need to have professional assistance to mediate. Those dollars go to the Conflict Resolution Center, which is contracted within our department to provide those mediation services free to residents and businesses. And it also includes $250,000 that goes to the, I'm sorry, it goes to a court process, public defender's office, and that's just a pass-through from our department.
Okay, and if you don't mind, the 30 million that's coming from grants, excuse me, 43 million, the grants and other funds, if you don't mind, I know you talked about the ARPA and the other things, can you, it's such a large amount of money just for the committee's benefit to understand how much of it is an ongoing potential, how much of it's ARPA and kind of a one-time, or, you know,
Sure.
just a couple years shot in the arm, et cetera, so we're kind of grounded in how we fund these homeless services in a long-term view.
I'm glad you asked that question. So the majority of the funds that are ongoing come from ESG, Emergency Solutions Grant, from HUD. And those dollars can be utilized for shelter and prevention activities. That's roughly just $1.5 million. There is currently continuum of care dollars that are incorporated into that dollar amount. Those dollars are shared in terms of administrative costs at a 5% amount. It's roughly $13 million that the city is appropriated by HUD, but I believe 7,000 of that goes directly to the state of Missouri Department of Mental Health, and 2 projects that get the funds directly. They come to the city, but they then go directly to those entities as approved by HUD. Okay. Under the other dollars in that $43 million, those funds go to our St. Louis Area Agency on Aging from a variety of sources. If you would like more detail, I can go into that. 416.
I think, you know, I mean, I hate to get into the weeds, but on an issue like homelessness, which is such a, you know, an ongoing issue, and I think, you know, understanding kind of all the funding involved in it, what we kind of do, don't do, are able to do, how that money comes in, how we fund agencies, what the city does, what the nonprofits do. It's just so instructive, you know, and to understand kind of how we have always funded it, or, you know, how we'll continue to move forward, you know, how much of this is, like I said, ARPA dollars, and, you know, moving forward, kind of what the budget would look like, is really helpful for us to kind of think in more holistically about how we address the unhoused in our communities.
Somebody phone.
I'm sorry, it was mine. It stopped now. I apologize.
I liked it. I thought it was nice. I heard the music. I was like, well, maybe it's relaxation time. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you, and
I'm
Valerie,
glad
if
you
you've got it.
appreciated it. So if I could elaborate a little further then as it relates to homelessness in particular, since that was a particular reference that Alderwoman Spencer made. Again, $1.5 million goes to emergency shelter directly from HUD to the city of St. Louis through CDA. It's not a lot of money. 500,000 of that goes to a portion of the Biddle House budget, and the rest then goes to other subcontractors who are doing shelter and prevention. There's roughly $7 million that comes to the Department of Human Services for continuum of care activities, and those dollars, only 2.5% of that $7 million is utilized by the Department of Human Services for administrative functions. The other percent, 2.5, because the maximum that you can use from NECOC dollars is 5 for administrative costs. The other 2.5% goes to our subcontractors. The balance of that $7 million then goes to direct services. The balance of that $13 million goes to the Department of Mental Health for their permanent supportive housing program. We do not govern that. It goes directly to them. Those dollars are generated by HUD based upon a formula. It can change every year, and it's a competitive application that we have to submit. So it's not guaranteed every year that the city is going to receive our portion of whatever the appropriation is by HUD. The difficulties that we have had over the years is that 1.5 million that is allocated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development specifically for emergency shelter doesn't do the trick. It's not enough money. We have been supplementing funds from ARPA to make certain that during COVID we could provide additional housing and shelter. Once those dollars dry up, that additional housing that's now being covered by ARPA dollars will not be available unless the Board of Aldermen and the foresight of the administration determine that perhaps there's another use tax that we need to generate that would go specifically to sheltering.
Can you, that is, the ARPA portion of it is what is the total amount that we need to figure out moving forward? Where, how much money do we need to find moving forward? Is that just the 1.5 on the?
What's needed above and beyond the 1.5?
What I would like to do is give you a more exact response to that. If you could allow me to provide that information to you following this meeting, and we will email that to you exactly what's being covered right now as it relates to emergency shelter from the ARPA funds. I will give you an example, however. Right now, we have a project called the Jefferson Spaces, which is a tiny house project located at Jefferson and Martin Luther King. I would welcome you to take a tour with me of that location. We started in 2020 with 50 houses. Those houses are accessible to individuals who are in wheelchairs and have disabilities, as well as individuals who can mobilize. ARPA dollars, it started with CARES funds, the federal CARES, and now it's being supplemented by the ARPA dollars. Those dollars end in 2024. We are adding 50 more houses so we can increase that population. It's a pilot project, not utilized for every kind of homeless individual in their circumstances. We are trying to pilot a project that moves individuals who are on a path toward housing to get them used to being in a unit of their own. We give them life skills. They have their own products inside so that they can start cleaning. It's a 6-month project. We assess individuals, make a determination if they are employed or on an employment path. Do they have any other type of income so that we can move them on? Another project that would need ARPA funds or some source of funds to continue is a single-room sheltering process that we have located at the Sisters Mission at the corner of 14th and Natural Bridge. Roughly, we have about 131 individuals there. We lease space within that building, and they are provided with the same kinds of activities. The success of the pilot at Jefferson Spaces and the success of the subcontractors at the Sisters Mission, we have not seen in a number of years from some of our other homeless providers. As of today, since 2020, when the Jefferson Spaces opened, and it held 50 individuals. There have been 135 individuals moved from those tiny houses into permanent housing. It's intensive services. We'd like to continue that project once the ARPA dollars end. The project at Sisters Mission, there have been roughly 114 individuals of the 120. Now, these are individuals who rotate constantly in and out of that facility, either because they want to on their own or because they are not working with the project. We have other shelters that can be covered with those ESG dollars that we don't have enough money to support. So we give a percentage of their budget, not their entire budget.
This is extremely helpful. So understanding how many folks we've kind of been able to serve, the 130 from the tiny homes and kind of the cycling through Sisters Mission, how much money we're spending on those two projects that would, without ARPA dollars, not be able to move forward, so that as we move through this budget process this year, next year, and kind of plan for the future, we kind of understand what the whole ARPA is going to create in these important services. We, I think, all know that we're, you know, even with all this extra funding, we still have a very pervasive and problem with the folks, with unhoused folks. And if we lose this, I can't imagine, you know, how we would be functioning. So we would really appreciate you kind of putting that together for us so we can kind of be thinking about what we would need moving forward.
And if I can make one other statement, during the pandemic, the federal government also made additional funds available through what's called ESG-CV. The CV stands for COVID.
Okay.
Those dollars also paid for additional services for homeless and individuals at risk of homelessness. Those dollars cannot be used after September of 2023. So I will make sure that you have a general understanding of what's currently covered with ESG and ARPA dollars, when those dollars end, and how much money roughly we may need to try to provide some semblance of the type of increased services that we've had during these last 3 years.
Okay, and so with the ARPA dollars, those are good through December 2024, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think maybe not necessarily this budget cycle, but certainly next budget cycle, we would have to figure out how to fund those services as the winter hits for 2024, because I'm assuming those, you know, that would be right in the middle of a very vulnerable cycle.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
The funds from American Rescue Plan Act that were allocated will be spent by the end of 2024?
No, they will
Okay.
not be all spent. The guidance that we've received.
Right, no, I was just making sure because I thought I heard you say that they had to be spent by December of 2024 and they have to be spent December of 2026. I was just wondering if you were saying that they run out.
We are
with what
seeking
you were-
additional guidance from the
Okay.
federal government because they have indicated that funds have to be obligated by 2024, which means we have to have contracts in place. But for direct services, there's some ambiguities to the language from the federal government. So for example, obligation in terms of a contract is one thing.
Sure.
The direction that we've received is that those individuals who would receive those services would have to be identified by 2024. In homeless services, that's a rotating pool. We can't identify those individuals. It's a little different if you've got someone moving into a house, they're going to be there. But with
And-
our services, we're trying to get further clarification.
Can you then give, just to add one more thing to your plate, a further breakdown of what ARPA funds that have been received that have been obligated and what has been received that hasn't been obligated, and any timeline that you have for when those things will be allocated and what they'll be for?
Sure.
Thank you.
So I guess with that, maybe it would be Valerie, would you like to continue with a presentation portion and kind of before we move into questions?
If you could let me know if there's any other divisions within the Department of Human Services that you're particularly interested in hearing about, other than the Homeless Services Division, I can certainly give you more detail. So for example, our Aging Division, there are 10 St. Louis area agencies on aging in the state of Missouri. Ours is one of those 10, and
Maybe actually, so since you've done such a nice job kind of providing us with this little packet, we could kind of just go through each of the pieces here. We've got the director's office, which you have, the kind of oversight, I presume, and then the
Correct.
homeless services, which we've kind of gone through a little bit. But feel free to just kind of walk us through your budget as you prepared for us.
all right.
And this is, by the way, very helpful. Normally, we're kind of fumbling through our budget books, and we really appreciate you taking the time to kind of pull this out for us.
Thank you. The department is broken up into various funds. At the top of page 400, which is Fund 1000, that includes the administrative offices and staff who are covered by general revenue funds. In addition, it covers some professional services that are provided through our Office on the Disabled, and we cover audit expenses associated with the city's single audit that has to be done on an annual basis. We have one new position in the Office of Administration, and that's a Public Information Officer. The position has not yet been filled. If you ask questions about the increase from what we originally requested, which was $1.636 million, we increased a number of the salaries of individuals for retention purposes, and that new position makes up the difference between the $636,000 and the $686,000.
And Valerie, just for clarification, so this table of organization is extremely helpful. So for anybody who hasn't taken a look at this is all the folks and their positions within the Human Services Organization. I think we should request this from every department. This is enormously helpful. And you've even identified the funds here that are funding each position. So thank you so much for doing that. I'll also note that you're the deputy director currently, serving after Yusuf recently left as the director. And so stepping in here to kind of oversee the department and present the budget as the deputy director. We're just really grateful for you to do that for us.
Thank you, and I want to give some recognition to Paramal, who designed this table of organization and wanted to make sure you had the specificity that you see there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So under the department, as I indicated, we have the Area Agency on Aging that you will see on the document, the Office on the Disabled. You'll see the number of individuals who are housed within that department. I'll make a note that all of the staff within the Office on the Disabled come from general revenue funds, unlike our other programs, which use grant funds as well as other dollars that their office secures. On page 416, as I indicated, Fund 1000 is all the administrative cost and those dollars that cover various staff members. Under section 1110, those are positions within the Homeless Services Division and our Fiscal Division. On page 417, Fund 1120, those are dollars from Economic Development Tax. We only have one staff person that's utilized from those funds. Under Fund 1505, those are dollars that cover not just our Homeless Services Division staff, but youth and family, and our Veteran Services Coordinator. The position is currently vacant, and I'm going to make a plug to the Board of Aldermen. We are having a difficult time filling that position. The position requires that we have a veteran who has an interest and or a background in doing claims for veterans. They have to be certified by the VA. And we selected someone who had all of the certifications, and on the day she was to start, she decided she was going to stay in retirement. So we still don't have a veteran service coordinator for a very vulnerable population, and that's the end of my plug for that.
Okay, well, with that, are the requirements too restrictive, or is there anything that we could do to help alleviate that piece?
The requirements are not too restrictive, but the process that those individuals will have to provide for this department are pretty detailed. And without those requirements, for example, if we are not able to do claims for veterans who need to file a claim or appeal a denial, we are not eligible for other veterans' dollars at a federal level or at the state level. So that's why that's important.
That clarification, so if we know any veterans.
Under Fund 1506, those are all grant-funded positions in our St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, and those are at the bottom of page 417 and the top of page 418. Fund 1509 are contract compliance officers and accountants that are within our Homeless Services Division. No, that's SLAE. That's ARPA, I apologize. One of the things that occurred when ARPA funds were appropriated is that the appropriations didn't cover a lot of administrative costs that we could utilize, and we are maintaining the spirit of those appropriations rather than trying to move in and say, no, we need more money for administrative cost. The accountant position is currently filled. Once those ARPA dollars end, that person will be picked up under Fund 1110, I believe, 1121, which is Prop P. So that goes through all of the positions, and again, you can tie each of the positions to by name of the position, and then the number that you will see to the far left, position 202, et cetera. And if you have any questions about those positions and why we have a box off to the right on the table of organization, those are positions that are unfilled and that we may not fill. We may not fill it because there are funds that we would have needed from other sources that we are in jeopardy of losing. So we're making adjustments to make sure that we can have staff available who can handle all the compliance requirements of all of the funds that we receive. Moving forward, I will take you to page 15 through 26 and revenue estimates. Our department does not generate revenue. We are providing services free to individuals who are eligible for those services. Either the eligibility comes from the funding source, HUD, those aging dollars, et cetera, or we are making certain that the eligibility of those funds are based upon income. So we are not assisting individuals for the most part who are wealthy. We are taking care of the welfare of individuals who are at risk. Within those revenue projections, the Department of Human Services on page 15 basically has one source of general revenue that is generated, and that's for a disabled parking fee. It's about $100 a year. It can go up and down, but we're not trying to take advantage of individuals who need those residential parking spaces. On page 22, you will see in the middle of the page, Fund 1111, Domestic Violence Programs. Those funds are generated through fees in the city courts, and those are used to subcontract with providers who do these services on a daily basis. We fund a portion of their budget, not the total budget, obviously. Under Fund 1111, Battered Persons Shelters, that also is generated to our department based upon court fees, and we subcontract out those dollars. The dollars that you see listed under the official estimate are a little bit elevated, and that was done by the Budget Department, but we can give you a truer estimate based upon historical use and receipt of those dollars. Those are the only general revenue estimates that pertain to the Department of Human Services. So I have taken the liberty of bringing some documents that I can provide to you that give you the detail of what each of our divisions do. But if you have additional questions regarding the actual budget, then I would prefer to go through that and make certain that your questions related to these dollars, since you have to vote and make recommendations on the approval of our budget, is important.
Well, if I may, if you have details of what those individual departments do, I think it might help fill some questions about the budget. Or if you could go through that first, might be instructive on all the aspects of the departments.
So one of the things that is a question that we always get is the amount of dollars that we get for homeless services. What do those actually do, and what is the department using them for? One of the tasks that you see in our table of organization is a client service coordinator position. Prior to Mayor Cruzen coming into office, we had literally just 2 client service coordinators who were engaged in doing outreach to individuals in the community when we get calls from the Board of Aldermen and the mayor's office and citizens who say there are homeless individuals, unhoused individuals in their community. Those client service coordinators provide assessment for the unhoused. They are trying to build permanent housing plans to help clients move from homelessness to permanent housing. They're referring individuals to service providers in the community, helping to search for housing for individuals who don't have access or transportation. They give bus passes and bus tickets out. Contract compliance is a requirement under all of the dollars that we receive, and that's why you see under the Homeless Services Division contract compliance officers. Currently, we have 3. We need 4. In the table of organization, there's 1 vacancy. Those individuals have to assist the Homeless Services Manager with creating the request for proposals that I mentioned earlier. They review and they rate the proposals that have been submitted under those RFPs. They draft, write, and engage in the executing of the legal, compliant, and contract documents. They monitor those contracts. They receive the billings on a monthly basis and have to review those billings against the budgets that each subcontractor has submitted to us before they can reimburse them for their cost.
So as far as the direct services, those client service coordinators, we had 2 up until the Cruzen administration. And how many did we increase to? How many do we have now?
Currently, we have only 4.
Okay.
And that is primarily because it's a difficult position, and individuals who we select decide they don't want to stay. We have a number of lists that we are provided by the Department of Personnel, and those lists we go through diligently to try to engage individuals in the position and make it as palatable as process as possible for the type of work that they're going to be doing. It's not necessarily the most glamorous position. Originally, there were 12 individuals that we were supposed to receive as client service coordinators. However, we are not going to fill all 12 of those positions. The reason for that is that we may lose some of the COC funds, that 2.5% that we can utilize for administrative cost. And so that we don't lose contract compliance officers and one of our program managers, we are shifting funds from the client service coordinator activity and making certain that we can maintain the staff in the administrative section of the Homeless Services Division that have to review these. So we anticipate out of that 12, filling about 6 to 8 of those positions. The contract compliance officers have to review every contract that we now have, and that includes COC contracts, ESG contracts, ESGCV contracts, and all of the ARPA contracts that pertain to homeless services. So we are shuffling individuals, and we'll make certain that if we do lose the COC dollars, the 2.5, those contract compliance officers will remain to make certain we can supplement the contract compliance requirements under other grant funds.
And Valerie, if you could, for the benefit of the committee, the loss of so the COC dollars could be, if you could explain kind of what's going on with that. The continuum of care is
The continuum of care is a federally required board that is to provide guidance to the City of St. Louis, who is the collaborative applicant currently for those federal funds. The Continuum of Care Board has made a decision that they want to remove the city as a collaborative applicant and provide or secure an approval from HUD for a different collaborative applicant. Under that process, HUD has to make an approval for that change. The collaborative applicant receives the funds and has to administer those funds, all contracts, do the RFPs, monitor the contracts, go through the reimbursement process to any subcontractor, complete the competitive application for these dollars on an annual basis, et cetera. Right now, HUD is reviewing the request that's been made by the COC board to remove the city as the collaborative applicant. Within that process, there are still some funds that the city will retain as COC dollars because we have contracts that are renewed each year. So what the new collaborative applicant will do, if HUD makes that approval, is apply for new funds. And then they will have to administer those funds and carry out all of the administrative functions that the city currently.
So how much funding is the city at jeopardy of losing? The 2.5% of 7 million? I just did a rough calculation, a couple $100,000. Is that basically what the city would potentially lose? Is it something that this committee should be worried about having a hole in the budget for human services, is what I'm trying to get to.
So the 2.5, which was all we could use as administrative costs, I think we've made those adjustments in the city's budget.
Okay.
That's what I was talking about earlier when I
You
said
did make the
right.
adjustments already,
We are
okay.
making those adjustments as it relates to the administrative costs, with the exception of 2 positions that are in our fiscal division. We still need to fill that hole if those COC dollars end. What I will do is tell, in this email that I send to all of you, tell you. Correct. So in addition to those direct services dollars under COC for contracts for subrecipients, there's a planning grant that is roughly about $500,000 that would go to a new collaborative applicant so that they can do planning for the COC. In the email that I sent to you, I will give you the exact amount that would be impacted if a change in the collaborative applicant is approved by HUD. The COC services that those COC dollars provide are permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, a coordinated entry system so that individuals can go through to be determined and assessed whether or not they meet the criteria for HUD. And then we have to maintain a HMIS system, a homeless management information system database that all subcontractors have to enter individuals' names and pertinent information into. Those COC contracts in total, the city gets about $13 million. 60% comes to the city, which is approximately $7,800,000. I indicated that the balance of that goes to the State Department of Mental Health, directly to Doorways, and 1 contract directly from HUD to Gateway Housing First. Currently, the city manages 20-plus contract from the COC funds. The Emergency Solution Grant is another fund that will not be in jeopardy if there's a change in the collaborative applicant. Those funds are appropriated to the Community Development Agency. They are the pass-through to the Department of Human Services. Those ESG funds provide emergency shelter, street outreach, rapid rehousing, homeless prevention, and it pays for a portion of the HMIS system. ESG contracts each year utilized roughly 1.5 million. Off the top, 515,000 goes directly to management of Biddle House to the subcontractor. And I will add that within the city's budget, under both Prop P and Fund 1110, the city pays for all infrastructure at Biddle House, all the utilities, all the repairs. That is not borne by the subcontractor that we have at Biddle House. That leaves from the 1.5 million, roughly $1 million for all other service categories under ESG. There are currently 10 contracts who make up that $1 million. ESGCV that I indicated ends September 2023. Basically the same services under ESG. However, there is a total award that was $9,823,000, and we had a total of 31 contracts for those funds. I mentioned the contract compliance officer's role and how critical that is. They are managing all of the contracts for ESG, ESGCV, COC, and ARPA. And we're losing them to other subcontractors because every employer out there is paying more than the city pays. The American Rescue Plan, there's roughly 48 contracts under the Homeless Services Division. That's currently $24,355,000. 5 more contracts are being worked on currently. The contracted service categories that we have that were appropriated under ARPA was mortgage assistance, the Jefferson Spaces, a Safe Haven emergency shelters, and there are 14 contracts under those emergency shelter ARPA dollars. Intake services and a hotline, there are 2 subcontractors for that. One of those is the United Way and an organization called Get Help, which is an app that individuals can access on their cell phones when they're in need of shelter. Wraparound services for individuals who are at risk or homeless, bridge housing, rapid rehousing, and supplemental services for permanent housing projects. Prop P, we currently have 1 contract under the Homeless Services Division. That is for Biddle House. The Affordable Housing Commission that you'll hear from when April Ford Griffin presents also provides funds to the Biddle House. On an annual basis, roughly $356,000.
Total cost of running Biddle House on an annual basis?
On an annual basis, we fund it at about 1.6 million, and that's for the subcontractor. From general revenue or Fund 1110, and from Prop P funds, we budget roughly about 500,000. We don't always use that, but again, we're making repairs. It's an old building. It used to be a building that I think animal shelter was in, and it's been renovated so that we have 110 beds there, as well as the case management and other direct services. They are fed 3 meals, and we have service provision there at the building. Our Area Agency on Aging is charged with serving population right now. The projection is that over 400 million people in the U.S. are age 65 and over. Over the next 20 years, there'll be an average of 10,000 people turning 65 every day. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates that there are 286,578 individuals who live in the city of St. Louis, and 13.9% of those are 65 plus. Our department is trying to make certain that those individuals can age in place. There are not enough spaces within long-term care facilities, memory care facilities, nursing homes, nor caregivers who can assist all of those individuals. City general revenue provides roughly $500,000 to the Area Agency on Aging's budget. $7,453,000 comes from the Older Americans Act for a variety of services. And ARPA funds within the Area Agency on Aging is $1.5 million for direct support care to workers and other aging services. The number of contracts that our Area Agency on Aging has right now with 19 providers is vast, and we only have one contract compliance officer within that division. The other funds that come to the Area Agency on Aging include, and these are in addition to the Older Americans Act, the State Department of Health and Senior Services for Medicaid reassessment, Medicaid home-delivered meals, Department of Transportation funds, Community Development Association funds for Meals on Wheels. We have a claim contract that trains case managers on doing the qualification for Medicare and Medicaid. We have a Senior Medicare Patrol Fund that we received from the government. We have a Navigators Grant to help individuals who are older and adults with disabilities to access health insurance. We have a Benefits Enrollment Center Grant, Senior Fund Benefits Assistance, Silver's Transportation Grant, which I want to kind of focus on because we have 5 electric vehicles. We submitted a grant application to a federal program called Silver's, and what that allowed the city to receive was 5 electric vehicles that were given to our senior centers so that they can begin to do meal delivery without incurring the expense of gasoline. And we get funds from Adult Protective Services Grant.
Five vehicles for $30,000. That's amazing. Okay. Excuse me, go ahead.
I just have 2 more to go through. Sure. Our Office on the Disabled is physically located here in City Hall on the lower level. We have a commissioner in that office. We have an executive assistant to the commissioner and only 2 other staff. However, the services that they provide to make certain that the city is in compliance with the Americans for Disabilities Act and the Federal Rehabilitation Act is critical to what the city of St. Louis has to provide. The office helps the city to comply. They communicate directly with decision leaders, communicating from a bully pulpit. Both the commissioner and the executive committee are wheelchair bound, and so we make certain that individuals who come into that office see individuals who themselves have disabilities and have been able to forge a productive lifestyle, because it's our responsibility to make sure that individuals who are disabled are not just homebound. They respond to issues both at the local level, and they assist the City Department of Personnel in various ways to ensure that individuals who become disabled on the job get some assistance with job accommodations or finding positions within city government to accommodate them so they don't lose their employment. The general revenue funds supply the budget for the Office on the Disabled 100%. They currently don't receive any grant funds. They train individuals and groups to think about the needs of individuals with disabilities and to recognize disability issues. They support and provide guidance to projects that are taking place in St. Louis, not necessarily with city funds. For example, they collaborate with and advise the Great Rivers Greenway. They provided guidance to the Gateway Arch Park Foundation and the National Park Service before the new arch grounds were built. They advise the Missouri History Museum, making certain that that facility is accessible. They advise the Steinberg Ice Rink to make certain that people can access that who have disabilities. They collaborate with and provide guidance to the Enterprise Center, MLS Stadium, and the Cardinal Stadium, and the Missouri Botanical Garden. Again, we have a commissioner, an assistant to that commissioner, and 2 staff individuals. Within that office, individuals who are hard of hearing can come in and use adaptive equipment. We have interpreters that are paid from the city's general revenue funds so that they can attend meetings that the Board of Aldermen engages in, and you can have an interpreter here if you request that, and other city offices can as well. That interpreting contract is with an outside entity, and there's roughly 330 hours of interpreting services that are paid for through that interpreter services. Under the other activities that the staff at the Office of Disabled provide is the residential disabled parking program. There's currently 2,500 residential parking signs that have been approved. The staff within that department has to go out physically and get assistance from the building division and the street department when needed to make sure that those signs are not being abused, and to make sure that the applications are updated because it requires a physician's letter on an annual basis, et cetera. We also have a very small division, and I'll say small only in that the staff there has been reduced over the years. The Youth and Family Division. Right now, there are two major programs that operate out of the Youth and Family Division, and those are feeding programs that are funded by the Department of Agriculture. The funds flow from the Department of Agriculture to the state of Missouri. The city serves as a sponsor for those two programs. One is the Child and Adult Care Food Program that provides meals to daycare centers and preschool, school-aged children enrolled in child care facilities. That's a year-round program. It also funds the Summer Food Service Program. I'm sure you've heard over the years, and I would encourage the new representatives of the Board of Aldermen to assist us. We can increase sites under the Summer Food Service Program to an unlimited number. We can provide training to groups. It can even be a block unit. It can be an individual who just agrees to serve kids in their neighborhood. You don't have to have a formal summer program. You don't have to provide other activities. We deliver the food to individuals through a vendor, and that includes breakfast and lunch, and those get arrived at the time that you want to feed kids. It also provides the beverage and every condiment, the full meal, goes to those programs. We, again, have an unlimited budget through the state of Missouri to expand the Summer Food Service Program. And so we will be sending information to all the Board of Aldermen, asking for your help to get the word out about the summer program. Starts next week as soon as school lets out. So kids who go hungry can come and get these meals free. You just tell us when you want the meal served. We provide the training and make sure that you know how to do it in compliance. The Summer Food Service Program operates from June until the public schools starts. The Child and Adult Care Food Program, again, is year-round. When the economic development dollars were provided for a youth empowerment program, we have one individual who's paid to monitor those contracts. Right now, we have to do an RFP for those economic development dollars. The one person in Youth and Family who monitors the meal program for kids also does the monitoring for economic development dollars and those subcontractors. I think I've covered all the divisions. What I have on my list is that the representatives here have asked for a projection of what would be needed once the ARPA funds end to maintain and or continue those services that are currently being paid for homeless and unhoused individuals. And the same kind of projection for what we would need when the ESG CV dollars end. You have asked me to let you know what ARPA funds have been obligated and what has not been obligated. I apologize. There was one other note that I started that I didn't write the entire request. Does anyone remember the other?
I was also asking for the whole, if there was any remaining. I know most of it was covered in the budget from the COC, if that were to go away.
Okay. That concludes my presentation unless there are any other questions.
I think as well, we were looking for how many people, it's the impressive figures on how many people were served through to the Jefferson Spaces, Sisters Mission, et cetera, because I think that's just really impressive for the committee. With that, I would like to turn over to committee members for questions, seeing the vice chair is stepped out by order of seniority, Alderman Oldenburg.
I have no questions
Okay.
other than what she's going to get back to us on.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair. That was an incredibly thorough presentation. Thank you so much, Deputy Director. Are you Director now? Is that which is the best way to?
Acting
introduce-
Director.
Acting Director, okay. Just want to always be respectful to folks. And thank you for all that you provided as well. It was a lot of information. One very quick question, noted a few extra accountants being added to the budget. Is that dealing with Oracle or more ARPA funds, or
Extra account.
were there any other new accountants this year?
We are filling positions that have been recently vacated.
Okay, great.
Far side of the table of organization, you'll see positions that were vacant. Those will be vacant once the COC.
Got it.
We may and may not lose monies so far as we are getting monies from the grant funds. We would want to use those monies before we use the city monies. But if it suddenly dries out, we want to make sure that we have something alternative, because it takes at least about 6 months to a year to fully train an accountant.
Sure.
And if we have to let that accountant go, and if we have to hire another one, it takes a long time for them to learn ERP and our requirements. So
That makes
this is what-
sense. Got it. Thank you so much. That's it. Thank you for the thorough presentation.
Alderwoman Sonier.
Yes, thank you for the very thorough presentation. I just learned a whole lot of information. I was curious about the timeline for the teeny homes transition. I think all of the department does excellent work, and I think it's interesting that you put justification of services for our aging population. I think, hopefully that doesn't take much justification, and we know that they deserve care like the rest of our community and our vulnerable community. But I was curious about the timeline. So like from the time that someone started their service at the teeny home to the time that they were transitioned into, permanent housing, which I think is excellent work, and thank you all for that.
So the design was structured so that, again, we assess individuals and only accept individuals who are committed to and are on a path to going from homelessness to try to get into permanent housing. So everyone is not eligible for the tiny house project.
And are you, sorry, are you saying you need to be on a path of sobriety? What is some of that criteria?
Variety, or you must be willing to at least consider getting engaged in AA or some role in taking care of yourself and getting off of drugs. You have to be willing to assist the case management staff there to work to get you approved if you're eligible for some entitlement services that you may not now be receiving, so that you have some source of income to pay for an apartment. There are activities that take place there at the location in terms of personal development, life skill training, et cetera. You have to be willing to go through the program. Those individuals who are not, then we assist them to get into other types of shelter. But this particular pilot is to try to see how long it would take to really work with someone who's willing to be engaged, to move from homelessness, and it could be for a variety of reasons. I think recently you may have noticed in the Post-Dispatch a story about a woman who was at the tiny house location approximately 8 months. And we don't hold individuals to that 6 month. If they're actively participating, then the staff there is very willing to continue that because they know they're on the path.
So the ideal time frame is 6 months, but it can be extended.
It could be
if that's what
extended.
they
It
need.
definitely can be extended.
And should someone relapse? Well, okay, I have two questions. One is about substance use, one is about mental health. I'm curious, in the teeny homes and in that process, if someone is schizophrenic or has more of a chronic illness, are there like psychiatric services available, just what that looks like? And then my other question is, knowing that a large portion of our, unhoused folks have, illness and forms of addiction, what is the process should someone relapse, or if they come to you and they've not started the process of sobriety at all, but they are interested? I'm just curious about those components.
So every case manager does a service plan based on the individual. Everyone is not tied to a strict, you have to do this. In terms of individuals who have a mental illness, we try to link them to mental health services, or if they have a service provider already, then we re-engage with that individual. If they're not compliant with the medication, we have individuals who come onto the property to work with those individuals to make a determination if the medication is correct. We have psychiatrists who are coming onto the property, as well as an open forum for case managers from other organizations that have clients who become homeless, Places for People, BHR. They are asked to, and to a certain extent required to, make sure they stay in touch with their clients to help us move them when they relapse. If someone is actively using, when we do the house searches, which we do, then if drug paraphernalia is found, if they are showing up on the grounds every night, because they don't have to stay there 24 hours. During the day, they can go. They just have to be back before the gate is locked at night. But if they're actively using, if they come in every night and they're inebriated, then they have a decision to make. And it's their plan. If they don't want to stick with the plan, then they can't stay.
Right.
Because it's a bad influence on others who are actively trying.
Now, I'm so glad that you all do have psychiatric services. I've worked as a mental health advocate before being elected, so, you see that cycle all the time, and I think a lot of times with that population is that they don't have access to the psychiatric care because it's so expensive. I mean, therapeutic services are as well, but when you're talking about, especially for those chronic mental health illnesses, those medications can be extremely unaffordable, or you get someone that gets a dosage and then in a couple of months they feel good and they get off. So I was just curious about that process. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Aldridge?
Thank you, Acting Director, for being here and putting together such a wonderful presentation and very detailed laid out. I would just say I would love to be in communication with you about that food program to be able to feed our young people during the summertime in whatever way, if it's a card or whatever, need to get in contact with you. Definitely love to talk more about that off record, but thank you guys.
Welcome, and I left my business card on top of the blue folders so that you can reach out to us.
Thank you so much. I'll just add a plug for that program. It works great. It has been really, really easy to plug into. I didn't realize it was unlimited at this point, so looking forward to plugging in as well. Just real quickly with that food program.
Can I ask a question about that? Just
Go ahead.
for the food services site, are there limitations on can you all work with churches? Are there?
And work with anyone.
Okay, thank you.
And you can serve 10 meals or 200 meals. We just need to work it into the schedule, and the vendor brings the food to your location.
Thank you.
When you present that information to the committee, I think we could also share it with the full board, obviously, but one of the things I think that would be really helpful is just to include a couple notes. I mean, with the personnel chart, this is so helpful, but often, especially for new aldermen, but even for myself, and I think those of us who have been here for some time, just knowing who to call, what the best course, a little bit of guidance when we do see homeless encampments or see, understand that a family is experiencing domestic violence or a child is in need. What, some guidance on who in your office or who are the city partners that we should be our first course of communication, and how we can best serve our constituents in those issues when they pop up would be really helpful.
Yeah, we'll do that and give you the names, email addresses, and contact for those staff within those offices.
That's really, really appreciated. I think it would be very, very helpful.
Call the Department of Human Services main number, and tell our staff what their issue is, and those calls can be transferred to those divisions as well. So there are multiple ways to engage.
Okay, really appreciate that. And in addition to kind of outlining the whole of that ARPA will kind of carve in the ESG, CV dollars, if there's anything that is missing from the budget that I think that may have been overlooked, we would like to know, just so we can consider making sure that your department has all that you need. I mean, there's so much unmet need in the community. We know that that this department can't serve every single need, but we're certainly here to hear what you might need to function better and more optimally moving forward.
So are you referring directly to what we need administratively in terms of dollars and then gaps in services?
Yes. Yeah. It'd be very helpful for us. We know that the city doesn't fund these services directly. Most of these are pass-through dollars from grants and other things. But if you could help us understand if there are gaps and ways that we could help you function better, we'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for your service to our vulnerable populations and to our city, and for being here this morning.
Thank you for hearing me.
Next up, we have our one of our favorite departments, the Communications Division, Ms. Jonna Brooks Sanders, if you don't mind. And I'll just, you don't need a reminder, if anybody, you don't need a reminder to speak into the microphone and tell us who you are, but.
Andre's going to join me as well. It's a little dark in here, so I need my glasses, I think. So good morning. Nope, that's not going to work. Good morning, Alderwoman Spencer and members of the committee. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to come in and have a conversation with you about the Communications Division and our budget. And since we do have a few people here who are a little bit new to the board, I did want to take just a few minutes just to kind of introduce the Communications Division. So the Communications Division is currently the home of the Emmy Award-winning Local Government Access Channel, commonly referred to as STL-TV. STL-TV has been serving the city of St. Louis for the past 33 years with programming designed to inform and engage the residents, businesses, and visitors of our city. During COVID, we made the pivot to serve as the lead agency, scheduling and hosting Zoom meetings for all Board of Aldermen meetings and committee meetings. And as things began to transition back into in-person meetings, you see our crew right here are very busy making sure that we are covering all of the meetings that are important to our residents here in the city. We are accessible on most of the mainstream social media platforms, from cable television to Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and via our own app. The division works with all departments of the city to help promote their services and the resources so residents can be informed and engage more efficiently with local government. And we maintain the city's YouTube channel, which averages about 20,000 hits per month. We are especially proud this past year, a couple of years actually, of our partnership with the Department of Health. For the last 2 years, we've been assisting them with COVID and non-COVID related messaging designed to keep our residents informed through ads that we've produced for radio, for buses and bus shelters. We've created billboards, and of course, we've produced programs that have appeared on STL-TV. Of course, our human capital is the most important link in our information chain, and we accomplish our goals with a very small but extremely dedicated group of producers, hosts, and technical crew members. Most of our staff wear multiple hats to help us successfully produce not just the quantity of programs, but more importantly, the quality of programs that we do each year. And yearly, we cover and produce an average of over 400 programs, and we don't see that slowing down anytime soon. For many years, our staff and crew have been steadfast as employees of the division. We require all employees to have a college degree to work full or part-time with us. But as in other departments and other issues around city government, we are certainly starting to see that stability wane, and that we're starting to lose really good talent because of current salaries and our ability to, meet those salary adjustments or meet those increases that they can get elsewhere. So our turnover has increased over the last couple of years. We've lost several employees to higher paying jobs. We currently have a vacant position in programming division, which we've been a little bit challenged to fill. The manager, which is Andre Holman, who was here with us today, has assumed those duties of that vacant position for the last 8 months. And I have assumed the role of the payroll clerk, the accounts payable, the accounts receivable, and the office manager for the last 4 months in the absence of having an executive secretary. We are a very unique and small group of employees who work for the city. My staff would love to see a salary study done for our group and possible salary increases as a result. I know the other important thing to note is that all of the employees are a part of Local 4, so they are members of a union who is working with the city, as I understand now, to address potential adjustments to their salaries and such. In the upcoming year, for STL TV, we are looking at working to stream the channel, which will allow us to, access to all of our programs without the barrier of having to be a paid cable subscriber, and in order to access our programs via television. We are also working with the mayor's office to construct an additional studio at 1520 Market. We plan to work with Slate to offer a video training program and also just to be available to work with the various departments in that building. We are funding these efforts through contracted projects that we perform for departments that have grant funds available. Our annual appropriation does not cover these efforts. As I mentioned earlier, the division is also has a regulatory section that is responsible for providing oversight of the city right-of-way for telecommunications users on behalf of the Board of Public Service. We handle over 400 permits per year from application to completion of the work. I have 2 inspectors who perform this work for the entire city. The section also serves as a liaison agency for all cable-related concerns within city government and for residents. We are also tasked as the lead agency overseeing the deployment of small cells for 5G expansion for telecom companies in the city of St. Louis. I have 1 engineer who is overseeing this project, and in the last 2.5 years, over 672 reservations for poles have been made by carriers, 519 applications have been submitted, 494 permits have been approved, and 398 small cell poles have been installed. Currently, the engineer and I are working with the mayor's office, chief technology officer and as well as others on a digital inclusion action plan for the city of St. Louis. While I'm happy to see that all employees will be receiving raises in the coming year, it is being absorbed with cuts elsewhere in my budget. My budget appropriation is flat, and soon I will worry about our ability to upgrade equipment or make repairs or even have funds for paper and cleaning supplies in the future. The division is funded through cable franchise fees. So if you have if you subscribe to either cable services with Spectrum or with AT&T UVerse, then a portion of your bill is going to those fees, and that's what's used to support the division. We do not receive money from general revenue. It's about roughly $2.3 million a year, and we are allocated about 1.1, as you can see in the budget this year. We are also responsible for the collection of right-of-way fees for use of the right-of-way. It used to be a linear charge where we were earning a roughly about $2.2 million a year. However, state law changed in '21, and it restricted, it actually stripped away our grandfather status to receive that linear foot charge, and it's now only a 5% gross receipts. We're still working, I'm actually working with the city's law department to work out the legislation locally within our ordinances that are needed for us to be able to collect those funds. So I don't know exactly what that total amount will be because we have not collected it as of yet under the new terms of with the law changing. We also generate about $100,000 annually from grant serviced projects that we contract with. And in particular, And some of that's not really reflected in our appropriations, so you're not going to see this, so I'm just kind of giving you some information. But we will work with various departments. As I mentioned, the Health Department earlier, they have gotten ARPA funds. They have also have money set aside within their budget so that they can promote activities, promote the resources. And so we work with them to do that for a small fee. And then finally, small cells, with that project, it currently is generating roughly $36,000 to $40,000 annually through the annual fees that we're able to collect. We are currently in a contract with a third party who, when we started this project, we did not have the ability to be able to track all of the city polls. So it kind of put us at a disadvantage of getting started. We have since been working with ITSA and now do have that ability to track the polls, reserve the polls ourselves, and I will be recommending that we don't renew the contract at its end next year so that we can take that process over and begin to do that ourselves. So all of that said, that's kind of who we are and what we do. We tend to think of ourselves as a vital link in the information chain, and I like to believe that our efforts to make a difference in building trust within our community by keeping our residents included and informed is what we do, and we do it to our best.
And you do an excellent job, I have to say. During COVID, I mean, the pivoting to all digital was handled so exceptionally well, and it was such an important piece of us being able to continue doing our job, our city continuing to communicate with the general public, and just our hats off to you all for really coming through at that really important time. It was really incredible.
Thank you.
You know, so Donna, let's go, before I turn it over to the committee really quickly, I did not realize previously or appreciate that, that you are funded through the cable fund. I know that has also been in jeopardy in Jeff City several times. Do we anticipate that continuing to be possible?
I think it's always going to, I think the cable companies are always going to work to challenge that, to reduce that fee. Right now, the federal government allows us to collect up to 5%, and certainly they have fought in many cases to reduce that and even eliminate it. But I know we're currently continuing to lobby against that to keep our fees in place, and so far, so good.
So please consider us allies in that moving forward. You know, if that happens to come up next year, we would be happy to join you in that. I know that's an issue that the St. Louis Municipal League lobbies heavily on, and area surrounding governments really participate in to make sure that those local municipalities can continue to receive those taxes, those funds. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the committee for questions. In order of seniority, I'll start with Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all you've done to transition during this period. I know you all have been working very hard and very professionally, and the staff's always great. So just want to say thank you for the folks who cover our meetings. They've just been incredible. So thanks for your time. Thanks for being here for the thorough presentation. No questions.
All right, thank you.
Alderwoman Saunier.
Same thing. Thank you for all of your work. I do have a question. It's probably a newbie question. So I know you said that your funds come from the, the cable, but you also said that you're concerned about not having enough for technology and paper and supplies and all of that.
Yeah, it's just it's the amount that we're appropriated. So if you look on the budget, you can see what we're appropriated. And, 80%, I think, of those funds are, more than 80% of those funds are basically salary and salary expenses. So, and it's flat this year from last year to this year, so there wasn't an increase.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
There wasn't an increase in salaries?
There was,
Okay.
the bottom line in terms of the appropriation.
Like, I thought we were
Yes.
getting raises, yeah.
Right, so it looks like there were some cuts made to materials and supplies, a pretty significant cut to equipment and assets to accommodate those increases in salaries.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you all have such a pivotal role because you help make sure that what we're all doing is transparent and that the public can see it. I would just be curious, on the conservative side about, are you concerned about this fiscal year running out of supplies and things, or do you think that's more of a in the future moving forward?
I think it's in the future, but I just mention it because it's been fairly flat, and the only really increase that you see in our budget really has to do with the raises. So if you look at the bottom line, the appropriation, the dollar amounts are the same. It just meant that I had to move and shuffle and decrease. So we have about $65,000 for the year for operations for the whole year. So, if equipment breaks down, things of that nature, we could be challenged to be able to do that. Or if we needed to replace equipment, the type of equipment that we use is expensive. So, we're talking cameras that cost us anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. So, we do have an expensive, equipment that we would have to, repair or replace. And we've been in the process of kind of upgrading over the years, and we continue to expand on that. But the way that I've kind of made it work is that we've taken on other projects that hopefully with other city
Garner some profit.
Yeah, that will generate some revenue that helps us to buy the equipment that we need. So, in other words, I look for, like, if city government, the health department or other departments may have a grant that requires them to do marketing or media services, that instead of them going out and hiring an external entity to provide that service, if it's a service that we can provide, we try to do that, but we have the same expectation that they would reimburse us, if you will, for those same expenses as if they were going outside.
I don't know, while I've been sitting here and learning all these things, I would just be curious. I don't know what it would look like this session, but, for us to talk about some sustainable ways to keep you afloat. I would imagine if most of your staffing and, most expensive part of most budgets are staffing. So if that's covered, I would just be curious, and that's why I use the word conservative, and I usually don't use that word, but in this case, like, if there was an ideal conservative number that you could get from the city to cover you for breakdowns or supplies, I would be curious about, what that number would be, what it might look like, so that we could.
I understand, and I would need to kind of work on that a little bit, because a part of that is personnel. So we have what's your staff number? 8? 8, yeah. So there's only 8 full-time employees.
And I know I see Mr. Holman everywhere, so he really be out here. I see
STLTV.
Yes. Unofficial ambassador.
Right, exactly. But we do have a need for all of the other things that these 7-8 people can't do. We have to have per-performance employees. And, just a few years ago, we used to have a per-performance budget in the neighborhood of about $180,000 to $190,000, and you can see this year it's down to 100. Well, their fees, their hourly rates have increased significantly. We have mandates on the minimum number of hours that they work. So it begins to kind of put us in a bind, especially in a situation where we've lost our supervisor. So we don't have a full-time supervisor for the last 8 months. We've been trying, but, we've got other issues around with personnel and individuals who have applied for the position. We've lost 3 of them to other jobs. So they were qualified, we wanted them, and they took other positions. And so that's required us to have to bring in more per-performance employees. On an hourly basis, they make more money than our full-time employees. Sometimes in certain situations they make about double per hour. So that makes it more challenging, and so for us to get these things done. But as long as we still have the ability to generate some revenue via additional projects that we might be able to do, we should be okay. But if that goes away and that's not an option, we would be at a deficit.
And you all don't have a reserve?
The reserves for all of our city departments is the city reserve,
Okay.
the city's reserve fund. Yeah.
So you'll look at it.
I would need to kind of look at that a little bit to see what that might look like in the next coming year. Were you going to say something, Andre? No?
Yeah, so okay. I think one of the things that I think is extremely important is our employees are our most valuable resource. I mean, across the city of St. Louis, that's a given. And in order to get quality employees, you have to be able to recruit them with a good salary. And so, Donna, in talking about this, I just thought it was important for us to just hit this point.
I'm sorry, Mr. Holman, could you?
Andre.
Mr.
Andre Holman.
Andre, Andre Holman.
Holman.
Could you
Give me-
please introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. I'm Andre Holman, Video Production Manager for STL TV, the Communications Division. Sorry. Thank you. But I just wanted to say that it's extremely important for us to invest in the staff. I lost, our video production supervisor who we lost, Shalene Houston Butler. She was on the cusp of being able to be the next video production manager, I feel, as I'm close to walking out the door, 32 years as of next month, and Donna's pretty close, 23 years.
Y'all look
So
good.
look at-
Y'all look good. Y'all look good.
So, well, yeah, I started here when Shamer was the mayor, so it's been a long trip. But I say that to say that, I've always tried to build STL TV up to be a point where people could progress. And we train interns, even Andy Rosica over there, who started with me like 15 years ago as an intern. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, cool, this is great. We're able to establish people who are part of the staff, and then at some point they move up to a full-time position. But it's sad when those individuals leave because they don't. I even had a full-time job with STL TV, but then you leave because you can go make money, more money, outside of city government. And I'm saying that in the sense that all of the government channels around this region pay more than we pay our full-time staff. And that's not right. That's not right. You can go to the city of Denver and look at, and I'm not saying compared to LA and Chicago and New York, but you just look at other cities comparable to St. Louis, and we've got to invest. We've got to pay them what they deserve. There's no reason that I've got college grads with degrees, and they're making less than those individuals who come and work in our department that don't have degrees. It doesn't make sense. It's a struggle for me to keep, and it's hard. It's hard for me to stay here when I know I can leave, when we know we can retire. But I love the city of St. Louis. I love STL TV. I've worked with these guys to build up something that the city of St. Louis could be proud of. There's not a lot of government channels like us across this country. And so that's why I've just, said that even though we lost Shalene, who was, like I said, a very, very valuable part to the video production staff, and then she went and did a job that she doesn't even, I wouldn't say she doesn't love, but it took her out of television. She went and did another job, took a job that took her outside of what she loves to do. But she did that for money. I couldn't keep her. Even when personnel tried to help and give a little money, it wasn't even still enough. So I'm just saying that we've got to do a better job in investing in our staff. The city employees need to be valued. They need to be valued. And we will continue to lose people. We will continue to struggle and have a lot of vacant positions if we don't take the time to invest in them and try to figure out what we can do to keep them. So I thank you and appreciate you all taking the time to listen to us today.
Well, we really appreciate you, so thank you so much. Did we have any additional questions from the committee? Okay. Thank you, and if you want to follow up with just kind of have us understand so that we can be prepared to understand what you need next year. And we hear you, this is making sure that our employees are paid well, paid competitively is so important to the well-functioning of our city and to the morale of our city employee community and to the work we do. So thank you for sharing that. It's really important for us to hear. Okay. Thank you. And with that, we have one more hearing today, our Parks Department, Director Greg Hayes, but he is not scheduled to be here until noon. So apologies, we're going to have a little break here.
Thank you.
Respect of everyone's time, I'll go ahead and get the Budget and Public Employees Committee back to order. One thing we need to do that we didn't do this morning was to approve the minutes from May 15th, our last meet, actually from several meetings. The meeting minutes from May the 15th, Tuesday the 16th, Wednesday the 17th, and Thursday the 18th. Could I have a motion to approve those minutes? I want to acknowledge Alderwoman Schweitzer's keen eye in making a correction there, but if I could get a motion to approve those minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of Monday, May 15th, Tuesday, May 16th, Wednesday, May 17th, and Thursday, May 18th, 2023 committee meetings.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Thank you. With that, I'll take a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Alderwoman Boyd. Aye. Alderman Odenberg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Aldridge. Chair Spencer.
Aye. We're just approving minutes.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
With that, we've approved the meeting minutes from the last couple meetings. And we'll get right down to business. We have only one item on our agenda for the rest of the afternoon, and that is Board Bill number 1. We are hearing from Director Greg Hayes over Parks, Recreation, and Forestry. And I'll just remind everybody, you could introduce everybody here that you have with us. Speaking to the microphone, I think it'd be helpful too, since we have some new older people here and we're really going in depth into the budget here this year, if you could just kind of describe everything under your purview, what you do, who you are, and who's with you.
Really appreciate that, Alderwoman and Chair Spencer, and fellow aldermen and alderwomen. My name is Greg Hayes. I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Forestry. Also under our umbrella of management, if you will, is Soulard Market and Brightside St. Louis. I'd like to first have each of our staff members stand up, introduce themselves, and let the committee know their titles. Thank you, folks. And they will be coming to the mic, I'm sure, with some respective division questions, if you will, at some point. But I will give and also, I'd be remiss, Commissioner Evelyn Rice is ill today, so she is not here. So she's not feeling well. So Joaquina does a great job, and Joaquina is representing the Recreation Division. So, committee members, if you would, I did a very brief, basic description of our budget. In the past, I've gone into some detail, and for sake of time, and most importantly, to answer any and all your questions, I'll just go over a few highlights. As Alderwoman Spencer said, I'll hit a couple of the highlights. But first, I'll tell you, for Alderwoman Sanye, I know we've met, but for anybody here on the board, I'll just give a brief description of what our divisions do. The Park Division, we have 110 city parks. Kim Hagley's staff handles all the facilities, the comfort stations, the grass maintenance services, anything you can imagine that happens in a city park. The Recreation Division, we have 7 Recreation Division managed rec centers across the city, and we have 2 YMCA state-of-the-art facilities that are city property, one at Carondelet, one at O'Fallon Park, and those are managed by the YMCA, and we are in direct communication with them consistently. Recreation provides outlets and positive activities for our youth and for our adult populations. And going on to forestry, that's Mr. Jankowski. That division handles all the vacant property maintenance in the city of St. Louis, whether it be buildings, vacant buildings, easements, even occupied properties when we cite folks for violations, and what we call easements, which a better term I always say is dislocated properties, those areas along the highway where one side of the fence is MoDOT perhaps, the other side is our responsibility. Allen's group handles all the tree planting, tree removal, trimming, stump removal, et cetera, with all the trees in our urban forests that's in our city parks. And those are all along our street line, our neighborhoods between the sidewalk and the curb, known as the parkway, or at times known as the tree lawn area. So any of those divisions can handle any of those requests or services. Going on to the next page, and then I'll go right back to the budget numbers. The director's office, that's simply where I am in Forest Park. We have a pretty limited staff, but I work with all our team, behind us. And we're at 5600 Clayton Road at Forest Park, just due west of Aviation Fields if you're traveling west on Highway 64. That's us. Soulard Market, we all know where Soulard Market is, right down the street at Carroll Street. That is managed by our division as well. We have a very lean staff there, but a couple custodians and a per-performance market manager. And that's a great place for folks to visit, get a variety of products, purchase those. And we're very proud of low cost, if you will, some inexpensive items to serve the public. Finally, Brightside St. Louis under Mary Lou Green. It's a unique operation in that it has nonprofit status, but it's also a city agency at the same time. Mary Lou's team handles all the beautification efforts in the city, in our neighborhoods with our strong block captains, neighborhood leaders, and I know Mary Lou and her team have worked with some of you, perhaps all of you. And she also has a unique graffiti eradication team that handles all graffiti that's not in city parks. Going back, before I close, let me just make a general statement that we are pleased with this budget. There are obviously some questions we'll answer and go into any details of anything you folks would like to ask the committee. And I will ask staff to step up if in fact needed to the microphone to answer specific questions. I looked at this when I put it together and before I came in. Respectfully, I don't need to read to you. So what I did is I gave you the budget of what we have currently, FY23, and what the budget is now in your booklets for FY24. The asterisks are simply some things we could talk about as we go, but I think I'll end there, and I just want to make sure everybody gets all of their questions answered. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Director. Okay, so do you want to invite, how do you want to, I'm open to having, in a general sense, we can just have department by department come up, or if we want to just go through and ask first if there's any questions for Director Hayes, I guess we could start there. I know we're going to go through in more depth each of the departments, but to my committee, I'll start with my vice chair, Alderwoman Boyd. Did you have any questions for Director Hayes before we get into the departments? Okay, thank you. Alderman Oldenburg.
Director, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Just to say it, you and Parks, Recreation, Forestry, you guys do amazing work, and I appreciate the value that you all bring to our city and to our residents throughout the region, quite frankly, not just the citizens of St. Louis. And it's always a pleasure to work with you. You're a professional, and I always appreciate that. So that being said, if there's one magic wand you could wave where you see some uses that could use more resources or some pinch points throughout all the various divisions or departments that you oversee as a director, what would that be?
It's an excellent question, Alderman Oldenburg, and I think I have the most appropriate answer in my mind, which is on my mind a lot. We have staffing challenges, and this is going to sound trite, and I'll be brief, but we have staffing challenges which perhaps may get solved in August, as we know, or at least be helped. Okay. So if I could wave a magic wand, I would provide, it'd be great if we could provide better opportunities to get the folks we need, critical positions, high demand, citizen demand positions, tree trimmers, lifeguards for our 7 pools, 3 outdoor, 4 indoor, folks that would like to cut grass in our parks and with the forestry division on vacant properties, we have high voluminous system of needs, and we don't have the staff. But we have gone out of the box, if you will, and when we don't have staff of our own, we pursue contractual services. That was unprecedented till about 3 or 4 years ago, but it was in extreme demand to make that management decision, and that's what we're doing. We're about, at the end of this month, we'll be 1/3 through the season, which usually goes through the end of September, hopefully into October this year with funding, but staffing issues are critical. And I'd say secondarily, but almost a 1A, are equipment issues. Obviously, we're in we have the staff when we're combining contractual and our own staff, but you have to have the equipment to run and to operate. We have had improvements there. We have been taken care of better, so to speak, the last few years, and it's been terrific. But those two are the things that come to the top of my mind. Our staff may disagree, but that's their prerogative as well. We're one team, and those are big issues.
That's helpful. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Thank you, Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The question I have is just around salaries for employees. Most of the departments we've seen, their budget request is higher than the proposed simply because of raises. I see yours is, it's $6,000 less, but were positions cut? I guess I could keep looking, but.
We haven't had any positions cut. We did ask for a few, and just a few extra that right now are not in the budget. Parks has an issue right now where Kim gave up a position to get some funds in contractual services. This is getting into the weeds, but answers your question. And right now, what she asked for is not in there, so we need to figure that out. And Kim can explain that a little better. It's trying to get some contractual services in Fairgrounds Park. But for the most part, with positions, we stayed static, and so I think what you observed is correct. I don't believe we've asked for any new positions per se. Oh, correction. We've been operating at Soulard Market for about 15 years with a per-performance manager. I did ask for a Soulard Market manager, a permanent position. We can't ask somebody without benefits to run the market.
It's a lot.
So that is what is in the budget now. It's currently listed as a program manager, which is a misnomer. We'll fix that later with personnel and call it the Soulard Market Manager. But is there any positions, to answer Alderman Schweitzer's question, is that accurate what I said, or is there a glaring miss? Anybody? Kim, this is very important. Would you step up, tell them about what we're working on, what you need handled?
So what I did was...
If you don't mind, just introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kim Hagley, Park Commissioner. So what I did in my budget, if you look at mine didn't shift too much except for what is probably salary increases. It's only a couple $100,000.
And where are you in the budget? Do you happen to know the page?
I do not know the page.
Looking at 109, I think.
I assume you're talking about some of the bump pay that came 2 months ago and the annual increases.
So last year, fiscal year 23, I was at 10,137,813, and this year it's 10,531,346. I did not ask for anything new. What I asked for was a swap of positions, and the positions were taken, but I was not afforded the additional money that I needed. So in other words, I had a park supervisor that was retiring out of Fairground Park, and it was an opportunity to take that park, which is a regional park, large park, and subcontract that out. And then that way, the surrounding parks around Fairgrounds would get more attention if I could take that off of the plate. So I eliminated that position, and I also took a position from per performance. And then I had money, our phone bill went down because we got a new phone system. And so I had that money, I said, here, I will give this up if I can have the $100,000 for the cutting grass at Fairground Park. They took the positions, but they did not give me all of the money I needed. They only gave me $50,000. So I need my position back to the director of budget was I needed that $50,000 back, and then they also removed a mail messenger. I'm sorry.
Okay, Commissioner, can you help us figure out where you are in the budget? I mean, I think one of the things, so we can follow along with where you are.
I am, it's 1,000 is the account number or the fund. And
Can I give you a copy of the book, and maybe you can kind of walk us through where you might be? I think
you
maybe
can.
it would be helpful.
I've not seen the book, but I can.
I think maybe we should have asked you to come prepared with some kind of documents for us, or, because there's just so many departments in this particular set that it's hard for us to follow. And we, to Alderwoman Schweitzer's question, funding what you need is important to this committee. The services that you all provide are top-of-the-notch parks, our recreation centers. The pieces that you all serve is incredibly vital for us to do our job and serve our community. So we want to know exactly what's missing, but we just, help us figure out where it is in the budget.
Right. In the
Or where
past,
to follow along.
in the
So if I were, no, go ahead.
in the past, the alderpersons would refer to a book, and I'd look at Paul Payne and say, I don't have what they have. Now, we got something from Jane Sussman,
Okay.
May 12th, in terms of pieced, but I have not seen that.
Okay.
We don't get that.
The budget documents are just, they're down, they are, I know it's not maybe as easy as having a book, but they are on the budget website. And hopefully you all have seen the budget. What documents were you working from?
We get an email from Jane on May 12th, and that's what we use,
Is that right? Okay,
and that's what I reaffirmed before.
okay.
Nothing, it's no disrespect to Jane.
No,
but
sure.
They said it's in the line item book on page 144 that you can refer to.
144, so we'll follow along.
We can get the piece of our PR on it.
144.
Okay, so this would be the staffing pieces.
Yeah.
Okay, the Parks Division staffing pieces on page 144.
So if you look at the park supervisors, Park Supervisor 1, you'll see that I had 10 in there, and I reduced that to 9. You'll also see the per performance line item went down by about $35,000. That's towards the bottom of the page. It went from 575 to 540. And then if you look at the communications line item, well, this is all people, but there was another 15 or so $1,000 there. So I had enough in reductions to cover the additional cost in the professional services line item to cover this. What I'm looking for is an additional $50,000 in my budget in professional services, which I gave up and had covered. And then also a mail messenger position. With the new budget system, it was kind of wanky because it was new. It was the first time any of us had used it. It was the whole Oracle, you've heard that, conversion. So things didn't show up exactly right. So it looked like I was asking for a new position of mail messenger, and I wasn't. I was actually asking for a full-time position, but if I couldn't get the full-time position, I wanted to keep my part-time position, and that was taken out of the budget. So we've been in contact with the director of budget, so hopefully that gets taken care of.
Okay, so $50,000 for one, does that cover the park supervisor position you were talking about? No.
Right, so the park supervisor position was a $50,000 reduction. The per performance which is a seasonal person, was like $32,000. And then I had additional $15,000 out of communication, and that covered the $100,000 that I needed to have a contractor cut Fairgrounds Park.
Alderwoman Schweitzer, does that answer your question?
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. I have questions about revenues, but I can wait, or is that now?
Well, I think, given how complicated and how there's so many aspects here, why don't we, Director, kind of, I hate to, do you have any direct questions for the director? Or maybe what I think might be most helpful to do is kind of pull up each director and go through the budget of parks, go through the budget of Brightside, and go through each individual budget so we can kind of get a picture of the whole set of budgets here. So, Director Hagley, if you want to kind of, if we'll kind of pivot and say, like, your budget, in order to function as, are these additions what you're looking for to just maintain status quo, or to improve, or help us understand what it is what it is those additional requests would provide for your department?
So honestly, it's not an additional request. Because I eliminated those positions, I already have the money to fund those positions. Or to fund this cutting of Fairground Park. It was, they took my positions, but they didn't give back the money, the total amount. So I cut $100,000 out of my budget in order to have a professional service. So I swapped. I cut it, but I added it back in under professional services line item. So technically, the difference that you see that I mentioned of like $400,000, that's strictly pay increases. That's not me asking for more money. All I'm asking for is the additional $50,000 that I gave back in order to get those services. Does that make sense? No?
I'm afraid it doesn't make sense to me, but,
deficit, which we don't, and we typically, I don't think we ever have. So she noticed communication. We had made improvements in efficiency there with the new system. She found some money there. She has a park supervisor retiring, found some money there, and made the decision to, okay, we're going to lose there, but we're going to basically become whole by asking for contractual services at Fairgrounds Park.
okay, so if we were to take a step back and say, okay, we heard from the director of Parks and everything, focusing now just on parks. Let's kind of start there, and we'll say, okay, Director, what do your budget for the year is $10 million, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and where are we to follow along, and we have no idea, okay. In order to make your budget work, you had to swap some things around, and you're looking for an additional $50,000.
So if you look at that, page, what was it, 144? You'll be able to see, if you go to the line item that says Park Supervisor.
Yes, we got that.
Okay. In fiscal year '23, I had 10. My request in fiscal year '24 is 9. So I reduced it by 1 position.
You reduced your request by 1 position?
Yes.
Why did you do that?
So I could have the money to have a contractor cut Fairgrounds Park so that my staff could concentrate on the neighborhood parks around it.
Do you need 10 staff people?
Yes.
Okay. It's very hard for us to understand what you need as a department when the request doesn't match what you actually need to function as a department.
I need 9 if I can get the contractual services.
I gotcha. Okay.
I actually have 10 different park yards, and this is getting in the weeds, and I have 2 supervisors for fairgrounds. 1 retired. So I have that open position, I have that $50,000. And that's where you see it went from 10 to 9. Then if you go all the way to the bottom, where it says per performance, you'll notice it went from 575,965 to 540. So that's a reduction in $35,000. That makes it $85,000 I'm saving in salaries. And then I saved another $15,000 out of communications because my phone bill went down, which is on a different,
Page.
yeah, if you keep going, that's Sular Market.
All right, with that, I would like to turn it back over to the committee for questions just pertaining to parks. Vice Chair Boyd, do you have questions for Director Higley? Okay. Alderman Oldenburg, did you have questions pertaining to the parks budget? Okay. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much for being here. Director Hayes had mentioned that a third of the workforce for the general department was contractors. Is that true in parks as well, or is that number different?
I actually contract out 4 different parks right now.
So much smaller than the third of the entire department. I mean, parks isn't bearing as much of the contractors. Is that more in forestry?
Yes.
Okay. So we have, okay. I think you said a third, but is that wrong? And you said 4 parks.
And let's make sure
parks.
we're just using the microphone just for
Oh, am I
folks
not?
at home. Yeah.
Oh, no.
No.
I was like,
Yeah, four parks.
got it.
So
Okay.
currently, it's River de Pear Park, which goes all the way down.
Huge.
Yeah, it's huge. And then I have St. Marcus Park, which is south. It's an old cemetery, a lot of handwork, a lot of weed whacking and trimming. And then up north, I have North Riverfront Park, which is huge open space. It's up there around the water department. It's actually water department land that we help with. And then we have another small park, Hickey Park. So those are the 4 we're doing now. Because of the seasonal staffing, we're not there yet. We're also short on our full-time staff, so that puts us even farther behind. So by being able to contract some of these bigger parcels that take so long, we can concentrate more on the neighborhood parks in the individual neighborhoods and really spend time there.
And you indicated Fairgrounds Park would be next in line for contractor
Fairgrounds Park
services.
that would be my next one. Another large park, a lot of open space, but then I can spend more time. The smaller neighborhood parks take more time because they have more stuff crammed in them, honestly, with playgrounds and pavilions and things like that. And so emptying trash and keeping them trimmed, we can mow, but without our seasonal staff, trimming becomes an issue. And so we'll be able to concentrate more on those neighborhood parks. And we also cut the medians, some of the random cul-de-sacs. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Alderwoman Saunier.
Just thank you for you all's service. Still just reading through and making sense of all of this. I find what you said about how you rearrange things interesting, but maybe as we go, I think it will just make more sense. So just thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. If I'm looking at, I hate to do this, but page 56 here of the operating plan, your $10.9 million budget for parks, recreation, and forestry is here. This is a drop from last year's budget of $11.2 million. Is that the way I'm reading this correctly? Yes. Okay, so we are reducing funding for parks, recreation, and forestry for this year.
That's the way it appears. You're right. It says 11,202, or 11,202,000, and then it went to 10,960,000.
Okay. I mean, so, and then I'm looking here in particular where we've lost the prop piece sales tax fund. There's a slight reduction in some of these other funds. They have, why is there a reduction in the 8-cent sales tax? Do we know?
We don't make those decisions, so I don't have that. That comes to us, so we have no idea about sales tax revenue.
Okay. I mean, I know I'll just speak for myself, but in a general sense, I think, as aldermen, we get a lot of requests for, Kim, I send you a lot of like broken slides, problems with our infrastructure and our parks department. The playgrounds, et cetera, are often very old and crumbling. You can't even get replacement parts. That's how old they are. The mowing, I was, hounding you last week. I know, I'm very sorry about that, to get Benton Park mowed in order for the Mighty Pines to play. I know we're often scrambling for these things. I just hate to see a reduction in the budget for these important services to our community. And I'm grateful to hear that you're happy about it, your budget, or you can make this work. But, on the surface, having a reduction for our parks, forestry, the mowing department, et cetera, raises a red flag for me.
So if I could answer that. So the 8-cent sales tax went from 5,000,004 to 5,000,005. So it did increase. But the other thing here is, what we're looking at is mostly the general fund, what I was speaking to. So we have other sources of parks money, and we have 2 sources of Metro Parks money, we have neighborhood parks money, and then we have regional parks money. So the regional parks generate their own funds, and you're not seeing
That.
any of this, there.
Okay, so that 10.9 million is only part of the budget?
That is what we call our 1010, or the new number is 1,000. So that is strictly operating. So that's more not all of my personnel, but all of my personnel except for Forest Park. They come out of a different fund. And then that's things like being able to rent equipment, being able to buy parts, or things like that. The Metro Park funds are based on taxes, and so is some of the neighborhood parks.
Okay.
So,
Well, it's confusing because we've got Forest Park Improvement Fund here as well in this list. So
what is the account number? Or the
I don't
fund
have an
number?
account. I'm looking at the the annual operating plan, which has a total budget of $10.9 million. It's if I'm looking at that correctly, parks, 220 is what I guess.
Does anybody have an extra book that?
Can we?
I vacuum,
Get these, can we get bucks?
or like a set to have it.
Why they don't have the
Okay. Okay.
I have never been this so confused in the budget. We never had it like this.
Okay. So if you look at page 69, that's strictly mine. If you go back to 210, which is on page 56, the Forest Park Improvement Fund, that is my staff and operational budget for my Forest Park staff, because Forest Park is about half of my total park acreage. So that Forest Park Improvement Fund is the money I have for staff, salaries, benefits, some maintenance type stuff, the phone bill, that type of thing.
question. So in the past, normally, and that's what the chair is trying to get clarity, why is this so crazy right now? Because in the past, what would happen, you all would present to us your budget, and we would know what was going on, but what's going on now, we don't have it. And so now you're telling us, okay, go to this page, go to this page. And like with Human Services, they just presented us what they had. But from what I'm hearing, if I'm off, tell me, you all didn't have all of your information.
We had it, but we don't have it in this book form that you have. We have what the budget division sends us.
Okay.
So,
We both have the same, I'm not being coy or smart, we both have the same book now. We're talking the same language, right? We're on the same, there's no other book.
Okay. Because I think that's what it confused. Okay, because I think that's what the confusion was. And I use Human Services as an example because they literally took their piece out of the book and made the copy and gave it to us, so we had a map to go by. And that's what I think it is. And so with us having new auditor people on, they're not familiar with the, process. So I think our chair is trying to help them understand. And so you all now, yeah, you have the book now, but I think that's what's the confusion, because we're like, okay, what are we doing? What's really do you all need? And that's what our committee is trying to find out. What is your needs? Where are you short? That's what we're trying to figure out.
I mean, our job here in the Budget Committee is to, as the Vice Chair was describing, to educate all of us on what you do. We come to you all year long and say, Director, can you mow this lawn? Director, why is this slide broken? Why don't you have this fixed, et cetera? And so now is the chance to kind of go through and identify for us where are the gaps for you so that we can try to fill them, or at least acknowledge that you're short, so that when we are going through this next year and we're coming to you every single day for things, we said, well, why didn't you tell us back in budget season that you didn't have enough X, Y, Z, so that we can make sure that our departments can function optimally. And so for us, these budget books, while they're very thorough, I see the budget director just came in, they are a bit confusing to come through because they're itemized by revenue sources, where these are coming from. So it's just helpful for us, because there are so many departments under your purview, Director, to kind of have an understanding. We want to make sure that that 50,000, wherever the line item is in here, because we've got to figure out what to actually put in for a change in these budgets if we're going to do that and advocate on your behalf. So that's where we're coming from, to kind of walk through what all these things are and understand how we can make any changes if necessary, and if we can find other spots in the budget to do so. So we're not trying to be critical, we're just trying to help, but we have to be able to be on the literally same page in order to do that.
Right.
So.
I totally agree.
Okay.
We've done the same approach for
Yeah.
many years.
I know.
The exact same approach
I know.
today. But and Chair, as long as we have the same page numbers, which I think we do, we can go
Okay.
right in line. But yes, if there's some preliminary confusion, we apologize. I apologize.
I need a line item budget book.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say is.
This is the general one, and it's not, no, she's,
Yeah, so we.
I was like,
and then
Paul, is there something I'm missing here? I don't want to put you on the spot.
and then I can tell you.
I don't want to be wasting folks' time at any.
I mean,
now Paul is doing what he has done for how many years, Paul? We're not going to say that. But, and I think what the confusion is,
62.
you all of us, me, Kara, Tom, and even Ann, Alderwoman Schweitzer, we have done this for a while, so we know the routine, but we have new people, and we want to make sure they know.
She's not looking for that.
So they could be clear on, the processes. So you on,
okay, so in order for parks to function most optimally, you need an extra $50,000.
So if you look at page 139 of the line item budget book.
oh, now we're on 139.
But you have to
Okay.
cross-reference with the other one. So if you look at 139, well, you're not going to, actually, you're not going to see it on 139. You're going to see it on 144. 144, about a third of the way down. This is what I was talking about before. You got Park Supervisor 1. I had 10, I asked for 9. Then if you go all the way down to the bottom of that page on 144, you have per performance. And you'll see it went from 575, 965 last year. This year I only asked for 540, 965. So that was that other $35,000 that I was referring to. So I had about 50 up top. I got 35 here. And then if you go to page 139, you'll see the communication line item at the very bottom went from $85,000 to $30,000. So between those three line items, I asked for an additional $100,000 in my budget, which if you look at page 140 and you look at professional services, you'll see last year I asked for $400,000. This year I asked for $500,000. If you keep going to the right, budget gave me $450,000. So I had the money that I gave up in the budget to get the $100,000. And I got 50 of that. That means I lost my positions and I didn't get enough money to cut Fairgrounds Park. So now I'm really stuck.
Okay, so in order to be able to compensate for the lost positions, the downgrade from 10 to 9 supervisors, and to account for that, we need to find $50,000 to make sure we can mow Fairgrounds Park. Is that what I'm hearing?
Based off of the budget that's in your book, yes.
And I just want to make one comment. We all know this, but I'll be rhetorical. But when we do our budget, we get an allocation figure from the budget division. In the past, I think we were the only department that did a budget to here's what we need to do the same services. Here we're going to meet your allocation, and here are the impacts if in fact we meet your allocation. So just what this would make us whole, Alderwoman Spencer and committee, of what we're asking for. Could we use a lot more? Yes, but we work with the budget division, and they're going to say you're not going to get that.
Okay.
So we have to show them the impacts if we meet the allocation, and we were satisfied in that we're not going to get everything we need. We could use another 5-10 million, but that's not reality.
And then the last item, so I need that $50,000. The last item, if you look on page 144, about 2/3 of the way down, you'll see a title called Mail Messenger Clerk. And it appears that it looks like, the way it looks here, that I was asking for a new position. I already had a mail messenger clerk that was part-time. I was asking for full-time. But I was probably unclear about that with the director. So I need at least my part-time position back. Otherwise, I have no one to deliver mail between us. And I have that in my budget, but it services everyone, parks, recreation, forestry. We're all in separate buildings, so.
Okay. And then if you don't have that, you won't have any delivery, you'll, like, that will be eliminated from what you have?
Yes.
We make 2 deliveries a day from our department because we are big,
Okay.
and we can't rely on another department to handle that.
And we, like I said, we cover that for forestry too, and Brightside. So if they got things going around, we're going around between all.
And this would just be to keep the park service that we have at what we currently have, which we all know, like I said, has, you know, we are withstanding a lot of broken slides and broken things and that sort of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, do we have any, go ahead.
That, the broken slides and things like that, that comes out of the Metro Parks and the neighborhood parks funds.
Okay, do we have any additional questions from the committee before we move on to the next department? Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. I had some questions about the revenue for the Parks Division. I see a lot of things like Keener Plaza Sidewalk Cafe, park concessions, Jewel Box attendance, Jewel Box weddings and events, rent parking, I'm not sure what restitution means here, where it's all just zeros. And I was wondering why that is.
What page are you on?
I'm in the revenue book.
Oh, I don't have the revenue book.
You got another book you deal with.
So the sidewalk, the Keener Plaza Sidewalk Cafe, that's zero because that just started. And that falls in line with the park concession. Services to Water Division, which is that first line, and this is page 8 of 26 in the revenue book. Those are ones that just even haven't gotten off of the ground yet. You have Jewel Box attendance, that's in there. Wedding events. Rent on parking, that's a different account number, so, it comes in, but it goes into a separate account, so.
The Jewel Box, where are we?
So these are deposit accounts. And so the rent on the parking is for the Upper Muni parking lot.
And what about Jewel Box attendance and weddings?
Jewel Box attendance is in there, that has money in there. Jewel Box attendance is $1 a person, so.
Thought it said
It's
zero.
at, yeah, it's at, I don't know why that's not in there.
Yeah, it says zero. And
Yeah.
then Jewel Box weddings also says zero.
I
Just want to
don't,
make sure all the money is coming in.
yeah, I don't know. I would
If you
have
could
to.
just see that, I would
I'd have to
appreciate it.
do a more in-depth because it's not zero.
Good. Always love when there's money that is not there and it could be.
Okay.
If we could just get the Parks Division's revenue information, that would be good.
Okay.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from members of the committee before we move on? Thank you, Director Hagley. We really do appreciate your service. And, you know, I mean, I know we hound you and we ask a lot of you during the year. And even, you know, you're gracious to just make those small requests because I know we have a lot, as you mentioned, millions of dollars worth of unmet need in our parks. And so thank you for bearing that.
I will say that we did get some ARPA funds for the recreation centers. I don't know if you're aware, but I also take care of the maintenance on the recreation centers. So we get about $500,000 out of the budget towards that. And then we did get some money towards roofs, boilers, and a little bit of money for pools. So that has helped with some of the structural items, but it's not nearly enough.
Yeah, when we're giving you about $1 million out of, I think, the GO bond that's coming this way for pools.
Good. Thank you.
Yep, just real quickly on the ARPA side, is there ongoing ARPA funds going into anything that's going to create a hole when that goes away moving forward that we need to be aware of?
Not for me, no.
Thank you. Okay, maybe we'll bring up forestry next.
I see. Well, you got your iPad.
Yeah, try this here.
Get there, Alderwoman Spencer and committee.
Ellen, you have the envious job of mowing vacant lots and doing all kinds of things, cutting down trees, piling up those emerald ash board trees all around town, and ticking people off. I really, you have a lot of things under your purview. So if you don't mind introducing yourself and what you do and what your department covers.
Yeah,
it'd be
my
helpful.
name's Alan Jankowski, Commissioner of Forestry. We take care of vacant building, vacant lots on our weed control side throughout the city, roughly 23,000. And it includes LRA and private properties as well. And then we take care of trees in the tree lawn and within our parks and other public right-of-ways, trimming, removals, and planting trees as well.
Where do you want us to look, Alan?
Wherever you would like.
That's fine. Forestry.
Yeah, if I can.
The current fiscal year and this year, and then just talk about your contractual service, I think that's.
So, make sure I'm going to the right page here. It looks like on page 129. I do want to point out our overtime. We do a lot on overtime, and that's 5109. For many years, we were at like 231,000, and we kept going over and over. So Paul was graciously put 600,000 in there for us to work overtime, and that includes our snow removals and then our call-outs in the evening for tree limbs down or our street blocking.
Okay, and that looks like that came out of the salary per performance budget?
Yeah.
Okay, so just
yeah.
move that right up, okay.
Yeah, and so our per-performance employees were having trouble hiring enough folks. We try to aim for about 70. The last year, I think we peaked out at 30, 36 maybe for a week or two, but in this year, we're at 20 individuals. But we're still hopeful to hire more as we work with the mayor's office on that. So that per performance salaries has gone down. Greg, what was it on?
Okay, so in a general sense, the forestry division is looking at a total budget of 9.3 million, is that right? Okay, this is slightly down from last year's budget of 9.3 and certainly down from the requested 13.8 million. Can you walk us through, because Alan, you seriously have a lot under your purview. Mowing vacant lots, mowing our parks, taking down these trees, planting trees is a huge amount of need and frankly unmet need. So walk us through why we would cut your budget.
Okay, so up at the top, you can kind of see our regular salaries, 5101. I requested $4.5 million and then was given 3.5. We were asking for a debris team to come work with our weed control teams. So not only we cut the brush and we stack it up in the alley, or we'll stack it up in front of the property, and then we have the street division debris team come and haul that away. We were looking to kind of do that all in-house. And so if we create debris, we haul it away. The equipment that we were requesting, we're working with LRA on that. And so LRA is agreed to purchase the equipment. It's about I believe it's $1.6 million in equipment. And so that equipment, it's going to take us 8 months to get that in and for those agreements to all be signed. So we'll be pushing for that next year. So there was like 9, or I believe it was 9 positions for that debris team. So that's why that request was so high there. And then also, if you look down at professional services, which is 56, it's on page 130, 566000. Last year we had $200,000, and this year we requested $2 million, and then we were granted $250,000. That's for our contractors to go out and cut vacant buildings, vacant lot, or really, they're just cutting vacant buildings. Our contractors are out there. And we were given 250,000 and we're expected to get some money from LRA to help us with that fund, to keep our contractors moving. So we spent probably about 1.8 million this year by the time July ends on our contractors. And then our other contractor we work with is our tree removal crew, and that's paid for through capital funds. I believe that's ARPA funds.
This will be year 3 of $1 million with Michael's Tree and Loader Service to help get the big city trees down.
Yeah, $1.1 million we have.
Goes through capital committee. Thank goodness it's been approved the last couple of years. Sorry to interject.
So there was some big items on why the request was 13.8, and then we were given 9.2. Yes.
So my question is, when we don't have that, what's going to happen then?
The capital money that.
Capital money, when you don't have that, so what are you going to do? You know, do we have a plan in place? I guess that's what the chair and I are trying to figure out. Do we have a backup plan when that money is not there?
You're talking tree removal only?
Correct, yeah.
I don't. You don't have.
That's a great question. The plan in place, I think this is year 3, Paul, well, I don't want to, Paul, this isn't Paul's presentation, that's not fair. This would be year 3 of $1 million, and I think we pegged that we can take about 2,000 city trees down on average, and these are the big ones because we don't have the adequate staff. If that would fall through and not go through committee, the only other plan we would have is try to set up contracts and get funding elsewhere outside of capital, funded through perhaps the general fund budget that Paul and we work with. But absent that, we can't handle 85,000 street trees with 15 tree trimmers. So it'd have to be more contractual services, whether it's from capital or not capital, some way to contract it out,
Okay.
if that helps.
Yeah. And how far have you completed on the ash trees? Are you through with that, or is it still ash trees? So how far along are you on that?
We're still out there working on the ash trees.
Okay.
Last I checked, there was probably about 5,000 still out there. But we do treat roughly about 1,000 of those. And, but we're making making some headway on that. I do see the Emerald Ash Borer looks like it is kind of being a little more aggressive and running through some of our neighborhoods. So,
Okay.
but yeah, we still have that contract out there. That's $550,000 per
Okay.
year.
Well, I just want to thank you publicly because you always answer the phone, you always respond, and your team really tries to accommodate all of us, so that's a good thing. I know it gets rough, this time of year it gets rough on you guys because, and girls, I'm not going to just say guys, and girls. And so you all are challenged all the way around, so I honestly appreciate you all, so thank you.
And, yeah, and we did get it's called a forestry head. It's on top, it's in front of a bobcat, and it's kind of like this big mulcher. And hopefully we're going to roll that machine out in the next week or two, and it really grinds down brush, and it shreds it all the way down to the soil surface. So not only we're cutting brush, but we'll be able to come back, and it's in a manageable level at that point where we can run a lawnmower over it after that. So keeping our fingers crossed that piece of equipment is out in the next couple weeks to help with our vacant lots.
Can I make one add, Chair? When Alan asked for $2 million, and he subsequently was given $250,000, which we understand, I asked Alan when we met, I said, where'd you come up with the $2 million figure? Because I review everything. He said, well, we're going to spend about 1.7, 1.8 on contractual grass cutting services. So you add 250 to that, that's essentially where that is to make it full with 2 million. Our challenge is we need to get funds, continue to work with LRA and get funds from them because absent staff of our own to cut grass, which you can't cut 24,000 properties with 30 people seasonally, we need these contractual services to become a reality and keep getting funded. That's just commentary, but we have to.
Going through the committee, Alderman Oldenburg?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I would like to stick on tree removal, because I do think that's a concern of a lot of residents. There sure as hell must have been a fire sale 88 years ago on pin oak trees that the Parks Department and the Forestry Department decided to purchase, because we are, right, I mean, I think that is a majority of the species, and those are the trees that also are all at their age level of capacity, or at their, you know, and dropping limbs and dying, and the ones that need to be removed. And I would argue this is a public safety concern when you've got a 90-year-old plus pin oak tree, and we don't have the staff or the operational capacity to get to it. It was said that we're in the third year of that $1 million contract, and I think that has worked wonderful. I think that contractor does a great job. And that was fiscal year 2023, so it is not in this current budget or being considered for the capital committee. And I think that is something that this committee should work on. $1 million removes 2,000 trees, the director just stated. So if we don't sort of find room for it in this budget, we need to press upon the capital committee to ensure that that contract gets renewed at least for another year. I would love to double it if we could, and work with the forestry department to consider that. So I don't think it's in fiscal year 2024, and that's, I know, a concern. I would say it's also a great concern that the contractual grass services also have been removed. That can become a public safety and a public health issue as well. But I do think this committee needs to seriously lean from what we're hearing around this tree removal. And $1 million at this point, I think, is something with a $1.3 billion budget we can nip and tuck to ensure that folks aren't waiting 3-4 years while a tree literally dies in front of their house, smashes their car, smashes their roof, and God willing could take a life or injure somebody. So that's sort of my statement to the committee. And I know that you all know this and live it in the forestry division, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oldenburg.
Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you so much. I share Alderman Oldenburg's concerns about trees getting cut down when it's time for them to go, so new ones can get planted, so we can restore our urban canopy. I know we talk about that a lot. So I want to talk a little bit about the revenue estimates from forestry. When it says weed cutting, if you need me to bring this up to you, I can, unless you have it in front of you.
Try to grab it here.
Yeah, it's the revenue estimates, page 8 of 26.
Page 8. Okay, 8, got it.
Got it. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. So services for LRA, that's what you're talking about, where in the past, I see the revised estimate for fiscal year 2023 ended up accounting for that, I think, million, that amount to come in, and now it's 750. And then for the weed cutting, is that when forestry cuts weeds at someone's property and then bills them? That's what that comes in?
Yeah, that's that.
How much is, you think, left on the table? How many people always pay, people rarely pay?
Yeah, you probably between 11 and 14%.
Actually pay, and then it gets added to their property tax or a lien?
And I don't know how, Greg, when they sell their home, it's on that
So it's a
property
lien.
sale.
Can I jump in on that?
Please,
Just 'cause-
I'm gonna go through all of them.
And all due respect to Alan and his work. So the number's abysmal. We've worked with various collection agencies over the year. We've re-upped with the same one, Credit Control. We've been told for years that the average collection rate in the country is about 15 to 20%. So to answer your question, Alderwoman, they've told us, their words, not mine, it's like trying to draw water from a rock, collecting from folks when we cut their grass. They are not formal liens, the grass cutting and the debris removal services. They're considered special tax liens, which are not certified by Comptroller Green, but title companies do recognize them as bills owed. And Alan gets emails all day long from title companies say, what does Greg Hayes owe on his property? We send that to him, and either the buyer or the seller is going to pay that bill. That's the only teeth we have. They're not certified costs. They're not certified liens by Comptroller Green, Because years ago, folks, and still today, they don't want to mess with weed bills in case someone says, you didn't cut my, they're not messing with that minutia. It's got to be, and we review it when we do have formal liens, and we'll make sure demos and bona fide ones. But yes, they're called special tax liens, if you will.
I hear you. I think one of the getting water from a rock is a good explanation and description of what I've found the entire budget process of trying to get more money for the city through these things that we do. I mean, if $225,000 represents somewhere around 14% of the money collected, I mean, that clearly is there's more money there. Tree removal payments, is that the same thing if you cut someone's private tree?
Correct.
That doesn't happen very often, though.
Oh, we'll cut down probably 20 a year.
Funny.
Yep.
Okay. And we get 3,000 back for that, or that's what's estimated, but that's may or may
just-
not happen.
Correct.
Okay. Rental of city property, can you tell me what that means in this
That's
case?
up at the compost site up on Hall Street, there's a building up there, and St. Louis Composting does all our composting up there.
Oh, great.
So they rent that property, or I believe there's a building they pay.
Fantastic. And then sale of compost materials, that says 0.
Sale of compost materials. Yeah, all our compost that we give out, we give it to community gardens are on those bins, those 11 bins throughout the city. So I've never sold any compost, so I guess that's a 0.
So that's in there from some period of time where we sold compost. Okay.
Yeah, this before me. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, as a gardener in the city, I do appreciate using the city piles of compost. I'm there all the time.
And they're screening it tomorrow, so we should have some compost out there at
Oh,
the end of the
man.
week. So I
Insider
know that's a
trading.
hot one.
All right, thank you. That's good to know. I'll be there. Those are the main categories. What does miscellaneous NEC mean? NEC. It's $1,000, but I still have no idea what it means.
Parks and
I think Director Payne knows. Okay. Okay, so I guess to go back to the weed cutting, in order to have that be a bigger revenue generator, it's just people need to actually sell their properties. Because oftentimes those properties are vacant properties anyway, and oftentimes, yeah,
right. Let me
we're just
add,
waiting
this
for them
is
to stop taking advantage of our city, basically.
very astute of you to observe that abysmal revenue number. But I just want to let everyone know in the committee, years ago, I went to the city councilor's office and said, we can't get paid for this work we're doing. And quite frankly, some property owners say, hey, forestry's coming by 3 times a summer. That's a bargain. We're not going to pay anybody. That's all they can get there doing buildings. So I went to the city councilor's office, said, can we find folks with a fee? We drive by, personal observation, 3 foot high, charge them $300, $500 as a fee, not as a cost for services rendered. And that discussion went on, and I don't think it ever got any legs. They said we couldn't do it. And we have ordinance costs. I don't know if we can look at upping those, which we probably should. We might get paid less, but upping them, making it more punitive. But I'm not sure if that's a Hancock issue or not. But we have talked about fees instead of service costs. We cut your property, so we're going to bill you. So these are discussions I think we need to start having more.
I appreciate that, especially how this issue ties in so closely with our vacancy issue in the city, and so how much time it takes your department, building division, me as an alder person, the neighborhood stabilization officer, human services, the list goes on and on and on when there's a vacant property that ends up just draining the city. So if there's a way to make that process more efficient, there is an every 6-month $500 fee that can be added to vacant properties if they do get that fee letter and don't answer and don't maintain the property. And I feel like that coordination between building division and forestry to make sure anytime your site, get a CSB for high weeds around vacant properties, building division is immediately issuing that fee letter so that at the very least, they are getting that $500 fee added to the house. So many of these vacant properties that are in our city are owned by out-of-state firms, LLCs that are just hedging their bets and waiting. So I feel like that's the rock we need to squeeze in my mind.
Yep.
So thank you.
I agree, and in section 14 on our ordinance there, it does have that $500 fee, and I think we were talking to the mayor's office and then maybe talking to the councilor's office on how we can establish that fee
Thank you.
instead of just billing as we do service.
And not getting paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Those are my questions.
You.
I appreciate all that you do. Thank you for always answering my emails and calls.
No problem. Call anytime.
Alderwoman Saunier?
Okay, I just have some questions just in general that I've learned, and it's probably well known, understood, but just as a new person. So I know we have one department who does the tree cutting and another person who cuts it, another area comes pick it up. I was just curious about the reasoning behind that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know enough to explain that to constituents, but I don't know the logic behind it.
Yeah. So our team, forestry, when we go out and cut a tree, we'll cut it down and we're chipping it up right away. When our contractor goes out there, they cut a tree down and then they'll stack it in the curb. And then they have a second team that comes and gets a grapple truck and they pick it up. And so this year, the first year we've ever had any issues with them, they had ran into some equipment issues and personnel problems, and we had debris laying down on the streets for quite some time. So we've rectified that thus far, and we're working with them closely to never let that happen again. So they have a 48-hour window when they can cut down a tree, and then they stack it in the parking lane, and then they're supposed to have it up. So that's our contractor.
So if someone's tree is cut down, then ideally within 48 hours, it'll be picked up.
Correct.
Okay.
And if you have a property, let me know, and we'll get it cleaned up.
I mean, y'all are really responsive. I can't say that. Like I said, sometimes I don't understand the logic, but I have learned who to email and who to reach out to and what to forward. So I haven't had a problem with responsiveness, just for my own knowledgeable reasons of understanding why.
Sure, and Alderwoman, you mentioned being new, of course, to the board. A decision was made beyond our department's control in the fall of 2018 to take 21 of our staff members in forestry who worked on district debris, which means you're going around the city in an organized manner, picking up all debris. All of those individuals were taken from the forestry division and the respective equipment, the associated equipment, and sent to the street department. So the logic was, we will handle what you guys do and ladies do, but I never understood why two departments handled one service. I will just say that was beyond our control.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess I should. There's the street tree removal, and then you have the vacant building, vacant lot, brush kind of removal. Yeah, kind of separate items.
Yes.
Is that, what's that? Say that again.
You all do which part of that?
So the tree, easement tree removals, that's completely all forestry. Like if we clear a vacant lot and there's brush on the lot, we'll drag it to the alley and then we'll set it there. And then the street department debris team picks that up. So that's our weed section and then our tree section separate.
Okay. Other than that, it's fine. I'm following along. That's
Okay, thank you. Call.
Alderman Aldrich?
No question.
Okay.
Thank you, Alderman.
I have a couple just cleanup questions. On the Mo side, you mentioned that those are not certified liens, certified by the comptroller's office. Can you explain why, if that would be helpful? And as Alderwoman Schweitzer was pointing out, squeezing whatever
Sure.
liquids from various hard objects.
Okay.
Ups rocks.
No, yeah, that's great. So I was just simply told years ago when we tried to send all of our delinquent in arrears bills and we send everyone that's in arrears after 90 days to a collections agency to try to collect on. I was told we will not collect our revenue, I guess, and the comptroller subsequent to that signing. We're not interested, we're not considering these formal liens, we're not going to, because there's hundreds and thousands of them, and we want to make ironclad sure if we're going to issue a lien on a property that it is a bona fide lien. So they didn't consider those because there's too much contention and dispute. You guys weren't here. I have Joe Smith cut my property every 2 weeks. You guys cut the vacant lot. All that possible incongruence or lack of clarification was not good enough for them. So all they do is demolitions, the vacant building penalty, vacant building registration, which are pretty arguably ironclad. So they're not interested in weed bills or those types of things.
Okay, but on those properties that have the vacant building designation, are we including the cost of providing the mow service in those certified lanes?
No.
For those which you just described as pretty ironclad,
Yes.
could we consider adding those mow fees as a certified lane to?
Yes, if one or two other city agencies are on the same page as us and believing we can, and they're probably going to still say no.
Okay, well, I would like to initiate that. I think it sounds like we could probably double that amount of income, possibly
Sure.
getting that 10% up to 20% national average on collections. And frankly speaking, I think it would help put a little more fire under these vacant building owners who do just sit around and say, well, let's let forestry cut it because I'm only getting charged $300 a year for it. And quite frankly, that is ridiculous because, it is cheaper that way to withstand those fines, and they're not even attached as liens to the property, and it's unfortunate. So perhaps Alderwoman Schmeitzer and I could figure out how to push for that, and if you could direct us to the city departments that need to get coordinated on that front, we would like to help you in that regard.
That's terrific. Alan, not to put you on the spot, but I used to review all those letters, and they came from Matt Moak years ago. Do you still get the letters where X number of properties have the specific charge, and you verify, since you were doing the bill, we used to do all the billing for the building division, do you still get those letters? Yeah. Okay. But there's no grass on there? Okay. There might be, well, we'll find out, but I don't believe there was never grass in there for 15 years.
Well, we would like
That
to,
would be huge if you could help us.
we'd like to help do that, and then make sure that all those funds go to your department. My second question, you were talking about the contractors versus city employees and how, as Alderwoman Saunier pointed out, there's two different entities that are handling that. What percentage of our tree removal or tree cutting is done in-house versus from contractors? To the earlier question about that breakout.
So our contract, all the trims are done by forestry staff,
Okay.
and probably, I would say 50-50 on the removals.
Okay, 50-50. Okay.
I was thinking it was a little higher contractually, but all
Yeah,
we have to do is look at the numbers.
Yeah, and it just depends on our staffing levels.
Okay, and
They
the
vary.
amount you have for professional services here. So, I said it at the front end of this, I'm just going to repeat it because I think it's important. The reduction in in total budget to forestry gives me a lot of consternation and a lot of worry for what our vacant buildings are going to look like this summer, what the dead trees are going to look like this summer, and what, just mowing in general is going to look like. I do not like even a, $100,000 reduction that you see here. So the professional services, being able to contract that out, I understand is very important. Bless you, salud.
Thank you.
I understand the overtime went up, but that literally just came from the salary per performance. And, your staffing, your regular staffing wasn't met. And I'm going to be continuing to come to you all year round and asking you to mow vacant buildings and asking you to mow things, and so, and take down trees that are about ready to fall on people. So I want you to have what you need to function. I know you don't even have, did you ever get a functioning awning on your building? Remember that was, oh, no, okay, yeah, tatters. It's pretty sad when you go to the forestry department.
We took down the poles. We took
Down the poles, okay,
awnings.
that's a good start, okay. All right, well, that's the least of it, but, you know, I also, Director, maybe this would be a conversation to have with the streets department. Maybe there's a good reason that we're unaware of to have them picking that up because they're already going through alleys, for example. I don't know that, but certainly you bring up a question, you know, the siloing or the bifurcation of the same service into different departments is, you know, initially doesn't sound like a great idea, so we're looking to try to help make sure we can streamline things. So that's a conversation, maybe not for this budget cycle, but ongoing, we could kind of think through and understand if there is a reason for that that makes sense. But on the other side, we do want to make sure that when we ask you, Alan, to mow something and you know, respond, which you are very responsive, absolutely kudos to you on that front, but that you have the tools to do it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so, we have stirred Kim.
Schweitzer, about revenue. Yes. When you asked me about revenue, and I said I didn't know where it was, there are two accounts with revenue. My 1,000 account. The other one is an 1111 fund. And that's where you see, it comes out of the director's office. So it's going to be, it doesn't come out of 220, it comes out of 210. So under the revenue estimates, I don't even know where it is. On page 7 of 26.
7,
This doesn't make it look any better
7.
after seeing the
Yeah,
book.
still zeros.
Yeah, it's still zeros.
And then I do see some 1111, as you just mentioned, and that's mostly Forest Park improvements and specific parks, Forest Park, Lafayette, Square Park. And those are the only
Yes.
ones, but,
Those are,
yeah, there's,
that's where the majority of the money is coming out of. So it's 1111, 210.
I do see 1111 Jewel Box admissions there.
Yes.
And perhaps that, under weddings, is that all weddings or Jewel Box? Because that's a lot better.
That right there, the 1111 account is just what is happening in Forest Park. And the other one that's in the 1,000, Fund 1,000, that's actually parks, the rest of the parks.
Sure, but the 1,000 fund does have a specific line for Jewel Box revenue and Jewel Box weddings, but Jewel Box revenue is in the 1111. It looks like
Yes.
it's accounted for there. And then in 1111 Forest Park improvements, it's the next line under Jewel Box admissions is weddings. And I do see the estimate for 2024 is 135, and I don't understand if that's covering Jewel Box weddings as well as other. I know my little brother got married in the visitor center. Delightful.
So 1111 is anything in Forest Park.
So Jewel Box weddings would be in there too.
Yes.
So it's okay. So it's just
That's strictly what's happening, because you'll see the golf course and the caterers and things like that. 1111 is only Forest Park.
sure.
I don't know why Jewel Box shows up under
Yeah.
1,000. That must be
Just
from
old.
old. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Interesting. How is it? Weddings every weekend, every 3 days a weekend, 1 day a weekend? I mean,
It depends
how-
on.
how
the
busy are we?
It depends on the season. But yeah, like now, between October, it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
great. like I said, just trying to find any place where there's more money to find. I will be
Like
looking for it.
World's Fair Pavilion, weddings.
Visitor Center, yeah.
Visitor Center is different.
Is it different?
Yeah, it is different.
Talk to my
That
little
comes
brother.
out of Forest Park Forever.
Okay, so they should have gotten married somewhere else. To be more helpful to my city. I'll talk to my brother.
It all goes back into Forest
Okay,
Park.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for coming up and pointing that out for me. I appreciate it.
Okay, what do you, yes, go ahead.
One more thing, sorry. So in my budget, I applied for a program coordinator, which was a grant writer. And I just wanted to say, even if we didn't get it, but that's fine with forestry, or even if it was within our department, or even in the city, if there was a grant writer that could help us find these funds that are out there. The Biden administration has released $1.5 billion for urban forestry. And that's something I've spent a lot of time on, working with different organizations to try to, help us write grants. And then once we get a grant, one entity can get $50 million for this urban forestry renewal program. So it's just something that I've seen lacking, and I don't know if there's a way that we could get one, or even if there was a service that we worked with that could look for grants and then come to us, so.
Yeah, that's really alarming. I just spoke with the former alderwoman from the 28th Ward, Heather Navarro, this morning about that particular opportunity. She did indicate she was willing to write the grant for you or help with it or work, and she understood that Forest Park Forever is also interested in that. So I was going to get with you separately. I mean, I know the position is, if that's something that we need to consider ongoing, Alan, because you don't have the capacity to go seek grants,
Yeah, and I talked to Heather, and it was even just, with the Parks Department or bridges, anything. I don't know how the other departments work with it, but it's just, I don't have any, there's no resources out there. And it takes, I think, a special talent to kind of make sure everything's written on those grant applications to receive those. So that's just my comment. Thanks.
Sure. Well, it does sound like Ms. Heather would be willing to try to coordinate some resources on at least the tree side of things. But the other pieces of grants, I'm not sure. So, I think it's helpful for us to know. I think having an understanding how much grant money we're leaving on the table by failing to have that position filled might be a good justification for the budget committee or the city to consider filling it. Okay. It's hard to kind of quantify what we're leaving on the table. And if there's I know the health department does an excellent job going after and getting grants. Maybe there's some coordination there on the health side of all of the pieces that you do. So if there's a coordinated approach that we could consider there, I think that might be helpful. Okay. But on that one, I'm happy to connect or make that connection or make sure that we can go after that $1.5 billion on behalf of our city. I think it'd be very worthwhile endeavor.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, what do we want to do? We want to do recreation, Brightside. I still want to do the Soulard Market as well. Okay, recreation.
You've already been introduced to Joaquina Callion. Let me just say, Joaquina does a great job with us. She is subbing for Commissioner Rice today. And just a couple entry comments I think will probably come up. If not, I'd be surprised. But we still struggle with the lifeguard shortage, which is a national problem. I don't like to blame things on national problems, but it's real here in St. Louis. We have the 7 pools, so Joaquina can touch upon where we are with lifeguards, and she has the same staffing challenges that the other divisions do in terms of rec assistants and rec leaders. So, and she can probably talk a little bit about summer camps, but I'll hand it over to Joaquina.
Thanks.
Make sure we're on the right page here, where rec starts. Oh, you're right here. Or at least you should start. Page 57, it appears, starts rec, I guess. So,
Thank you, Greg.
answer any questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, aldermen, women, and men. How can I help you? You ready?
Okay, please go ahead, yeah, introduce yourself and what recreation does for us.
Okay. Well, I'm Joaquina Calian, and I am the Program Manager 2 for Recreation. And right now, we operate all 7 of the recreation community centers, where we provide different activities for our youth and for our adults and senior living. Right now, our budget, we were pleased with it. There was some things that we did want to see an increase in. We were looking for an increase in a custodian, and that would be in our budget, 1,000. And we asked for 2 custodians to be added to the budget. Unfortunately, we did not receive that this year. We think it's very important that we do get a custodian because of all the issues that we have right now. We have a total of 5. So that's 1 per center, but at this time, we're actually having to utilize sharing the custodian. So they do a half a day at one center and do a half a day at another center. With that being said, we're trying to get, with the help of more custodians, we could have a custodian at every center where there's somebody there all day, every day, especially with summer camp coming. It is imperative that we do have someone in there to help clean the building. It helps cut down on sanitation issues. It also helps cut down on the rodent issues, as well as just maintaining a safe environment for our kids and our adults to be inside the building. That goes along with making sure that our pool areas are clean and sanitized and ready for swimming, and the locker rooms are clean and ready as well. We also asked for additional rec leader so that we could have a rec leader at our centers. At this time, we're down 1. We asked for that as a /driver because right now we have 2 vehicles that requires a CDL license in order for us to drive. And at this time, we have no staff with a CDL in our rec leader position or our supervisor position right now. I am the only one that holds that CDL license. But we would like to be able to take our kids on trips, field trips throughout the year. Right now, we asked for an additional $20,000 to be able to add to our summer trips. Last year, we spent well over $20,000 for summer outings, plus another $20,000 that we spent for our football team to be able to travel to nationals and regionals. So we went over our budget. So we asked for that, but at this time, we did not get that as well. We did not receive that. So we felt if we had a rec leader /driver, at least we would have someone to be able to cut down on the transportation here in the community and in our area, regional area, where they can actually drive our vehicles that we already have that are sitting unoccupied, not using.
Just for clarification, we need to take children on a field trip. We borrow one of Alan's CDL drivers to drive, and we try not to disrupt his grass cutting and such. So, and we still can work on this issue post-budget process during the year, asking personnel for a TO change to try to get a couple drivers to recreation. Because we have 24 passenger buses that are ideal.
Yeah. And we also utilize a school bus system during the First Community during the summer. That's where we spent a majority of the money, but however, due to gas prices and everything, one trip could cost you $500-600 just to go from Cherokee Center to the zoo. It was $500.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand it over to the committee for questions. Alderwoman Schweitzer?
Thank you so much. Are our recreation programs full, or do they have a lot of, how are we doing with getting kids and adults to participate?
Oh, yeah, our centers are full. We keep them going. During our football season, we had over 350 participants. During basketball season, we had another 350. Right now, our summer camps are full. We have 100 kids registered to go to all 7 centers throughout the summer. There's 2 sessions, so we have 50 the first session, 50 the second session. We also have our swimming. Last year, we had well over, just in the summer, we had over 10,000 participants that come through the pool area. We also have, with our new programs that we have throughout the summer, doing after summer camp, we also have our after-school programs. And at that time, all the centers have anywhere from 25 to 50 kids in the afternoons.
And are all these
School.
programs, how much do they cost? Are they free? How does that work?
So all our programs are free. We do not charge the kids or participants, our seniors that come to our senior water aerobics classes. We have adult volleyball classes on Sundays. We have chair aerobics for some of our seniors that come from the community out to participate at Gamble. We also have our tennis team, indoor tennis team that comes and support, but we do not charge our participants anything.
I had seen in the recreation division, another, in the revenue book, that there were $0 coming in, so there's, even for special events, I mean, they're not renting out these facilities for anything, or they just?
So we do, at this time, we do not rent out for most part, but if there is, we have what we call the Friends of Accounts. So if they choose to donate money, it's a donation, and that donation goes back into that particular center's account, and they're able to utilize that money the following year for supplies or something that they need in their centers.
So that's not reflected on anything that we would see?
No.
One addition, we do have, we've run requests for proposal processes because we've been afforded programming funds. So we do contract with private contractors, the Thomas Dunn Center, George Sam's Music, Teach Children Classical Music. You can name a few more, but those are no cost as well. We pay the contractor their contractual fee, $30,000 a year, $20,000 a year, $5,000 a year, but all of that is no cost to the children.
Okay, thank you so much. Those are all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Alderwoman Saunier?
I think services for recreation centers and our kids are very important. I'm just curious from you all's end, what is like the ideal engagement like between the alder of the area and the recreation centers in the area?
Well, some of our centers work very well with our aldermen, and we're looking forward to continuing that relationship and trying to build it a little bit more, having people come out to the centers to see and visit and actually participate and come out and support our centers. So.
And could they potentially be used for like hosting community events and things of that nature?
We do host community events right now for some of the aldermen. They have had meetings there. We've had community support groups. We've also set up for voting so that people can come in and vote at our centers. So we're trying to be active in the community area as well.
Okay. Is there anything, I guess, is there something that, I guess I was asking for kind of more specifics, like would you like a communication check-in with like a director of a recreation every couple months, or what does like maintaining that relationship kind of look like, or building it?
Okay. So right now, we're open to communication. So once a month would be great to reach out to the aldermen in that area and talk with the supervisors. Each center has their own supervisor who actually determines what programs are going on in their centers when they start. So that way we don't overlap anything and everybody meets together. So definitely reaching out to the community center supervisor to set something up so that you can come in the center. Some of the aldermen already come to the centers and participate, and they have events there. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you. How many centers do the city have?
7.
7. Is Family Youth and Family Center under the
No.
Cochran Youth and Family? Okay. Okay. That's all I was curious about.
I did have one add. That's a great point about we're trying to get away.
Can you talk into the mic?
Oh, yes, sir. Sorry. Sorry, Joaquina. We're trying to get away, sounds negative, but I don't mean it that way. We're trying to move toward calling our centers community centers instead of rec centers. I always use the phrase ball in the hall. We're not just somewhere where you go bounce a ball. That sounds very facetious, but we're a community center. So we don't just have to have sports and activities. You've worked with the Board of Elections to have elections, as Joaquina noted. So we want it to be community-based, not just, hey, let's play some sports in our centers. Whatever folks want to do in a productive manner. Alderwoman Spencer is very active at Marquette over the years. We have Alderman Schweitzer, obviously, at Carondelet Y. She's very familiar with that. That's the closest one. We would highly recommend and really enjoy that connection even more.
Any other questions?
No, I just wanted to note, yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see that the investment in recreation went up a little bit. I think it's such an important piece. You know, as the director mentioned, I've been very involved in the rec centers, at least at Marquette, the one that was in my former district, and it was a really positive relationship that worked really well. Alderman Aldrich, did you have a follow-up?
I do have one question. Are there any, how do I say it, scheduled maintenance or updates? So I think of like, is Woes a community center?
Yes.
Or recreational center?
Yes.
Is there future plans, and I probably should look at the line on future plans to like update some of these centers from the 20th century to the 21st century?
So we work really well with Parks, who helps and maintains our building. As you know, well, you may not know, but right now, recreation, we actually provide the programming that goes on in the buildings and things like that. But when it comes to the maintenance and upkeep, actually Parks takes care of that for us. And we're always looking for funds to help maintain the building. As you know, they do need to come up to the 21st century. So we are looking for electrical upgrades and things like that as well.
Well, I appreciate it. And even outside of that, I know everyone is, you know, struggling for water out of a rock. I don't know how many times we say that.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate the work that the Recreational Center do to support our young people, especially in the summertime, so that they have a safe place to go to. So thank you for all the work that y'all do. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
At another time, we can tell you what Kim has on the plate, working with Paul Payne and myself, and some of those infrastructure improvements, especially new roofs on some centers. All right. Whoop, excuse me. Alderwoman Spencer, you wanted to talk about, of course.
We've got Brightside here.
Oh,
Mary
yeah,
Lou.
we can talk about, I was going to go to Soulard, but we can do
But-
Brightside. Perfect, thank you. Expand a little bit on what I had said earlier.
Thank you all, appreciate it. I guess I need to move that down. So, as Greg mentioned earlier, Director Hayes mentioned earlier.
Can you state your name?
Sorry, Mary Lou Green with Operation Brightside St. Louis. We are primarily funded through block grant funds and private donations for our focus on graffiti removal. We don't get any general revenue funds for that program. We had been primarily funded through block grant, the public services category. CDA decided to this year make it half public services block grant and half ARPA funds, which will cover $370,000, which primarily covers the staff benefits and some of the supplies for graffiti removal. We then raise money separately for other graffiti removal supplies, beautification supplies, and cleanup supplies. So when somebody borrows tools and things, those would have been purchased privately. The flowers we just planted outside City Hall and throughout the neighborhoods over the last few weeks, those were all purchased privately with donations to Brightside. And then in the director's budget, there are 3 positions. 2 are currently filled for recycling, outreach, and education. And then we also raise money privately for those 2 for outreach and education for recycling to purchase in-home recycling bins, dumpster stickers, and other educational materials for recycling.
Thank you. Okay, so just really quickly, I'm sorry, so the grant funding, the 377, before 2022, where did that come from?
It had been community development block grant funds under the public services category, 100% funded. In 2022, for 2023, they switched it up. Half is going to be public services, half is going to be ARPA funds.
Okay, so not having ARPA just would hopefully put that back in the CDA hopper, and that they would consider funding it, or the community development block grant funding.
That is certainly our goal.
Okay. Well, we really appreciate the graffiti removal and all the things that you do. It's so important to keeping our communities looking good and addressing those issues when they happen. I will turn it over to committee for questions. Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate all that you do. I work with you all regularly with cleanups, and I appreciate how easy it is to work with you all. I don't think I have any questions about your budget at this time. I just really appreciate you being here and all that you do. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Osanier.
No questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Aldrich.
Echo what Alderwoman Schweitzer said. Appreciate how you guys are just always have supplies and materials when organizations or older people want to do cleanups, can come to you, get trash bags and pickers and all that good stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so helpful. Okay, that was easy.
I will say I felt like a professional when it's the first time I did one recently. I've been going to my ward, and the official thing to pick up the trash made me feel like a real pro, real cleanup.
Then you get the litter grabber award for the day. I will tell you one other quick thing, if that's okay. We did an evaluation of our CSB complaints, and our overdue work order list for graffiti removal was at 11 last week. So we're very proud of that.
Yes, yay, congratulations.
As long as we can safely remove graffiti and safely access it, that's what we do. So
That's a big
thank
deal,
you all.
especially with the creative graffiti artists we have in our city getting very high up on buildings. Alderman Aldrich.
It's definitely an art what they do. Sometimes I'll be like, how do they get that up on the highway like that? So if I didn't know that Brightside do the graffiti removal. Okay. So if we do have some art that's probably not the cutest, we just CSB it and get it to that way.
That's perfect. And then we have to follow the city ordinance. We have to give the property owners 14 days to respond. They have the opportunity to remove it, but an ordinance was enacted that allows us to then go out and remove it unless the property owners tells us they don't want it removed.
What if it's city property?
Then we consider it public property, and we can give it to the crew to remove right away.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's definitely some discretion of what's art and what's graffiti. So, and we have those conversations with people at times, often.
Very true.
The graffiti wall is nice downtown.
Jane, you're the best. What, 225 Soulard, do you know what page it is offhand?
250.
Oh, well, that,
wait,
yeah.
25.
Pardon me? I have her book. Alderwoman Spencer, what page?
147.
Okay, thank you very much.
146.
Jane, by the way, we were going back and forth with budget, saying about the books and stuff. I do have to hand it to them. With the new system, Jane and Paul and the team were so helpful the last 3 or 4 months, so I do appreciate it. Okay, what page did you say?
146.
That's not the, yeah.
Okay, I've got page 76 in the annual operating plan, and then
Has been located. Thank you.
146 in the,
Thank you, I was in the other book.
oh, yeah.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Chair Spencer, I want to be respectful. So Soulard Market, I already talked about it. I'm happy to answer any questions. We have 2 full-time custodians. a part-time custodian in the, typically out of just 5112 seasonal money. It's not filled right now. And we have a market manager who is per performance. The individual does not get benefits, and we're planning to change that with this budget. It's been we used to brag about it. Hey, we're in the black now, we're not in the red in prior years, but it's unfair to try to run that with a seasonal employee. It's a pretty big operation, arguably.
Yeah, I would agree. I'll turn it over to the committee for questions. I have a few at the end. So
Sure.
Alderwoman Schweitzer before.
No questions, thank you.
Alderwoman Saunier,
No questions at this time.
Alderman Aldrich.
Maybe I missed it. I do have a question. Similar to the recreations, is there any plan? So when I was a representative, I took a tour of the Soulard Market. It is I think a gym in the city, but it's one of those gyms that we overlook, and it needs some upgrading. And even had the pleasure of going to the very top where I don't think a lot of people know there's a basketball gym up there and some office space.
Correct. So the gym was deemed with we decommissioned the elevator with the state of Missouri about 3 or 4 years ago. The gym is off limits. The gym is a gem, if that makes sense. You're right. It's gorgeous. Talked to some private potential partners years ago. That fell through. They were looking at it for beer and wine pairings, have a public-private partnership. That didn't reach fruition. It is gorgeous. And yes, to answer your question, thankfully, with the funds to make capital improvements, I believe there is $1 million. Pardon me? 1.5 is going to Soulard, which are unprecedented funds. We have boilers, plural, that are probably 70, 80, 90 years old. When they go out, we're scrambling. And that facility needs tons of TLC love, if you will. 2012, we did prior to my tenure, was a master plan done. It identified long-term needs upwards of 14 to 15 million. Not too long ago, not too many months ago, we were asked to put a price tag on what we would like to see at Soulard. We asked for $7 million, and we had it all detailed on what needs to be done. And that's not just the tarps at the vendor stands. We're talking electric, plumbing, walls, boilers, roofs. And so that's the 1.5 we're getting at this time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay, so Director, what's the difference between the 14 million that was done back in the 7 million that you've recently put together in needs and the 1.5 million? I understand from vendors that there's like hoses running to the stalls because the running water isn't working. And, that's a real concern. The bathrooms are real concerns for people that are going in there. And, for those of you who haven't visited the Soulard Market, it really serves a large number of people from all over the city. It has everything from your local local farmers that are producing very high quality local stuff to things that are off market that are extremely inexpensive, and it's a very, very wide range of things that you can get there. And so it's really unique in that way, and really, really valuable to the community in that way.
Sure. So that study that I mentioned, the master plan that predated me, 14, 15 million, right around that range was identified if you really wanted to do everything that needed to be done. 11 years later, I project that's probably 20, 21 million dollars, or right around 20. I'm not an engineer, but what we were asked is basically, I don't even know if this is a fair statement, but I'm trying to recollect, we can't ask for 50, we could have asked for 15 million, but what are the basics where if these problems happen, you're going to be out of the market business? And we identified upwards of 7 million. Roof, electrical, like I said, boilers, and maybe some's escaping me in terms of specificity, but we came up with 7 million of what we need to do now. And it came up to, we're getting 1.5. That was we made the cut of the threshold, and I don't know what that monetary threshold was, but it's 1.5 million we're getting, and those are unprecedented funds for Soulard, no doubt.
And where are the 1.5 coming from?
That is through
ARPA? The capital appropriation from the last cycle. Okay, and that's if we could get a list of what that's gonna address, Paul, it'd be helpful. Okay, I'll certainly maybe look for it.
And sorry,
Yeah, that's okay.
Alderwoman, I gotta ask, I thought we didn't glaze over it, we kept moving. I thought we were getting another 1 million for tree removal. I thought that passed for Michael's tree unload. Okay, so nothing for the coming. Okay, okay, thank you, I digress, but yes.
So on the tree removal side, Alderman, we're not doing another million for the tree removal. That's a totally separate thing. I know it's not
I'm sorry,
Soulard market,
I'm just
but-
not privy to some information.
Okay, because that's going to be alarming if it's actually, we already know it's not coming.
Well, we have two things. One, we have our normal capital budget, which is what you have before you as part of the regular operating budget.
Right, mhm.
Right? Then in the last 2 fiscal years, we've had the good fortune of having both an operating surplus from the prior fiscal year, which by ordinance, half of that goes to capital fund. And then we also had some ARPA monies that we appropriated. So in the last year, that's not this one bill that was passed in February, but the bill that was passed the prior year, there was that $1 million that we did for, I believe, forestry. And I can't remember the name of the board bill, but yeah, there was $1 million there. There is not currently another $1 million. There was currently, in the capital budget, the regular capital budget, you have $500,000 for the ash tree initiative. So, but we do, assuming that we do end up the year with a surplus this year, 1/2 of that, again, would go to capital, and again, we would be allocating that in a supplemental capital appropriation, hopefully this fall. And so that's what we're looking at.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Was it 184 of the board bill? Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry to go back to trees, but that, I had to, before we left this meeting. But, yeah, so we're going to see some improvements at Soulard, just not to the level we'd like.
Well, I don't want to take the committee too much, I don't want to take any more time on that, but I do want to dive into that to Alderman Aldrich's point in being a gem. I think we have a lot of work we can and should be doing there to bring that up to where it needs to be. Okay.
If anybody has a private partner, citizen, individual donor, or somebody in the corporate world, feel free to, even if it's confidential, of course, put them in touch with me. And I've had those conversations in the past. We just didn't get it locked in, and we continue to have those discussions. So I'm readily available.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kim had one last comment, and then we're going to wrap this baby up.
When we talk about that $1.5 million, and just so you know, I not only take care of the recreation buildings, I also help with Soulard Market. So Soulard Market is unlike the recreation centers where I do get $500,000 normally to go towards rec center repairs, but those are emergency repairs. With Soulard, when Greg says you're going to see some improvements, you're really not going to see some improvements. What you're going to see is the boilers being replaced. Nobody ever sees those. And the reason why I'm making the right, and that's the reason why I'm making the clarification. This is more structural, infrastructure type things, so you don't expect to go into Soulard and go, wow, because you're not going to see that. You're right. There's plumbing issues, there's electric, and there's the roof, and then there's the boilers. So we'll see how far that $1.5 million goes.
Do we have any other questions from members of the committee?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment, Kim. Don't sit down. I just wanted to publicly say, she knows I have a park in my ward that when it was the 27, I called it our Forest Park. And they worked diligently with me for a couple of years for the redesigning of that park to do some things, make it more community friendly. And they redid our bathrooms. By the way, they were from the World War I bathrooms. So we redid the bathrooms, and we were really excited. And somebody did not respect our community enough, and they stole all our pipes.
Oh.
So I want to thank Kim publicly because she worked with me, and we got the pipes back in, and we got lights, and we got cameras over there. And so if it wasn't for her diligently, it wouldn't have happened because she just kept coming back and said, we're going to fix this. So thank you very, very much, because now my Forest Park is looking great. I appreciate you.
And you're getting a new playground there.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Yeah, they stole all the pipes out.
I just want to say, I want to thank you, Chairwoman Spencer, and the entire committee. I apologize, it's not our style to start a meeting where folks are kind of looking around saying, where are we going with this? Where's the steering wheel? So the books and not coming with the mirror image of what you have is on me. So I apologize for that. In the past, it did happen a few times, but I don't think quite to the level of frustration at the beginning of the meeting, so I apologize.
Great, we appreciate it, and we appreciate all you do. Okay, with that, thank you all for being here so long, going so far into the weeds, all of the weeds, and we appreciate you. All right, did you have one more thing?
Pun intended.
Unintended, that's right.
Thanks.
Absolutely, okay, and with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved, second.
And,
Oh, did we? we
Thank
didn't
you so
approve,
much.
did we
thank you.
Just like they stole